Yes, we're not.
All right.
Okay, look at this.
Let's go.
And J-Rock with a steel chair.
I can't hold that now.
Wait, hold on. Did you say steel chair? Hold on.
Yes. People gonna watch this live. Like, what is it?
Somebody take a picture of me.
I think it, oh my, and it's
Wait,
brand-
it's WrestleMania season, bro. Don't about a steel chair, bro.
Yeah, it's steel chair.
I thought he said steel chair.
I thought you were going to steal the chair. Okay, sorry.
I didn't realize that was
All right.
WWF.
Oh yeah. John Cena turned heel. If anyone is not aware of that.
If anybody would like to console about that, like I'm right here.
We're on live.
We knew it was gonna
We
happen.
can talk about the amazing television's gonna happen over this year.
But anyway, John Cena. First of all, thank you for everyone that's coming. For those, I feel like everybody knows me. Obviously, if you're in my
Who are you?
right? But just a little like, just a
What are you
little
doing in my house?
for the people over there. A little, whatever. Animated J, I go by. Today is an animation talk. We're going to talk about what is animation, the style of it, the techniques, all of those things. Why? Because recently, in my opinion, there has been more animation dance events, and people have been talking more about it, even social media. I had a conversation with Clocks, that really started making things, the gears moving in the head of like, oh, what is this animation? Let's go into it. And also there's more events happening all over, like with Unime, and then France, and then China, and like I think Japan, like it's like growing. With that being said, there seems to be confusion at the events where people are doing robot, some people are doing other styles that are not even popping or anything related. Some people are doing popping, and then you have vice versa all mixed in, which kind of causes a little unclarity about it. And there are people that talk about this. There are OGs and people in LA that do share about it, but I think this is an opportunity to go deep with it and having different people here to share their thoughts. Collin from Utah, I feel like I believe we met either at Unime or we just talked on Instagram Live. Was it Unime?
Yeah, I was at the battle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Collin, dope robot, dope animation, like he made this presentation that we're about to go into and talk about animation. And I thought that was great. I was like, I don't see this. I don't see people doing stuff like this. So I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we all came together to go through this and then ask some questions? You too, for those that are there, if you have questions, write it down. We'll ask at the end.
Yes.
So yeah, that's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do. And then just to share, just like a guideline or structure of it, this is all out of, the intention of this is just being respectful and just open-minded and having a conversation, a dialogue. We're not here to say this is the things because that causes conflict and then people start to break apart and now, we're here to just discuss it because there's a lot of questions that people have. And if you have thoughts you want to share, go for it. This is part of it, is for us to have a conversation about it. There isn't like a one rule or one thing that's it, that everyone stands on. Yeah. After that, I guess we'll go into it. Cool? Any questions?
Would you like me to turn the angle of the light so that we get some on the front of the presenters' faces?
Yeah, that would be great. See, this is why Clocks is here. He's dope at the movement and with the light design. Like
Gaffing.
See?
Right? That's the way. Great.
Wow.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, should you go to film school or something?
That's really good. Plus the vibes are still there.
Very important. Can't lose the vibes.
Cannot lose the vibes.
Cannot lose the vibes.
I can work the camera.
Wait, you're reading the question.
You need to move the camera a little bit.
You know what?
I'll be cameraman.
Before we go into Collin, before we transition to Collin, we're gonna do a quick introduction for everyone here that's here, just so everyone kind of familiarize. Who are you? A little bit of why you're here. So everyone, you can go and share your name and how did you hear about animation? So either when was the first time you saw it or the first time you heard of it used in dance. And you can just share that moment and then we'll keep it going so it won't be like, talking. I'll go first. My name's James, Animated J, and the first time in my mind that I solidified or saw animation, I would say, on like a high scale, was Yumin. Kote Senin, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he's from Japan, and he did a Missy Elliott video. He was one of the 4 dancers, one of her videos, and there's like this YouTube video where they're all in white, like a white background, and they have different colors, like red, blue, green, yellow. It was actually advertising Uniqlo, the clothes, which I didn't know that. And it went viral, and they were like this dun 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 dun, and then like all this crazy stuff. So that was the first time I was like, oh, I didn't know it was called animation, but that was the first time I saw it. Yep, you got it. I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah, I can move the camera to you.
Oh, there
You're
we go.
chilling. Yeah, I'm the camera guy. I got you.
I'm Ivy, aka Poison Ivy or Liquid Ivy. So, I mean, deep down in my memory, I'm sure y'all know Step Up, the Step Up movies. So, the one was Step Up 3D. If y'all know Mad Chad too, after seeing Mad Chad doing like his scenes in the movies, I wanted to learn whatever he was doing, and I was thinking it was just robot, but the more I got deeper into the culture, the more I realized, oh wait, there's another style called animation, which I honestly to this day don't know what it is.
That's why we're here to learn. Let's go. We'll try to figure it out.
I'm self-taught in robot and animation, so I just hope I get something out of this today.
You will. Oh, okay.
And I'm passing it on to you.
Hi, I'm Maddie.
Hello, Maddie.
What's up? That's all, Maddie. I'm a studio dancer, actually. So I'm just here to learn about something that I actually have no idea about. I would say the first time I saw anything was actually Mad Chad 2, but it was at a carnival here when I was like 14 and didn't have any right to be out on that dance floor at 14 years old. But I didn't know who he was, but I saw him, and I'm sure you all have seen him dance, and you're just like,
Oh my god.
that was my little 14-year-old ass being like, didn't know what it was. Connected the dots, saw Step Up 3D later, and I was like, oh. And then I don't remember exactly the first time I heard the word animation, but I just kind of like put it together, and I was like, oh, I understand. And then I asked Clocks and Animated J at Carnival that we performed at, and I was like, what is animation? And they went, you should come on March 7th because we're going to discuss that. And that is how I ended up here, everybody.
Welcome. We kidnapped you.
Passing it on. Oh, thank you very much.
What's up, y'all? My name is Aki.
Hello, Aki.
I think the first time I heard of animation was through Nonstop and watching Dragon House.
Yeah.
Per usual, you know.
Yes.
Great dancers for sure. They definitely modernized what animation is today, I feel. And then I really started picking up on that style through my homie Orbit, because he's an animator, so yeah.
Nice. Oh, shoot.
Alright, what's up everyone? I go by Lambo. So I feel like probably before I was like a dancer, I probably just saw random things on TV of people doing a robotic dance or something like that. But I think when I started actually registering, like, oh, this is like a crazy art form and I feel inspired and I want to get into it, I think it was Step Up, like Ivy brought up, but I would say the other footage that I saw that really inspired me was when Boogie Frantic was on LXD, and watching that, I was like, whoa, I really need to get into this. So I think that's what really inspired me. And I would say like around then though, then I was vaguely just in like the animation popping whatever label. It all was like the same to me.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, some people could say.
It's definitely a good majority of people.
So I think as I got more and more involved with the street dance scene and just like seeing which spaces, because I feel like I've dabbled in a lot of different styles, and I feel like which spaces I felt really comfortable in, and I feel like just being around like animators, I just feel like my movement aligns well with it. So I think that's where I got really inspired and just wanted to pursue it further.
Nice, bro. Oh yeah, thank you.
You got us a view.
Hey, I need a sad story. Anyone got a sad story? No, I'm just playing.
Say so you think.
Right.
I was born in the back streets of LA. My name's David. The first time I learned about animation was I was just learning how to dance electro swing. I was doing shuffle dance, and there was this guy I really liked to watch, and he mixed shuffle with robot. He was calling it robo swing, and his name is Nyland.
You gotta send us a link to this.
Yes, I will.
That's so cool.
He's an Estonian. Anyway, and then I watched an interview of him, and he was talking about his inspirations, and he said Nonstop and Popping John. So I didn't know about Nonstop, so I look at Nonstop, and I see his 2015 World of Dance crazy movement to dubstep, and I'm like, I gotta learn this. Literally, he's slowing down, speeding up. It's like watching just sheer entertainment. And then I started watching some of Popping John stuff, and that's one thing led to another, and here I am.
There you go. Very cool. Gene.
So your name and how you first registered animation.
My name and how I first registered animation?
Like, how you what was your first experience? Hey, Gene.
These guys just arrived.
Everything you need to, you're the narrator. They're bonding right now.
They're bonding. Yeah, so we're just giving introductions for everyone. So how you got into animation?
And what's your name?
And what's your name too? That's cool.
My name's Gene.
Yeah.
I go by Mean Gene.
Mean Gene.
My first introduction to animation, or how I got into it?
Yeah.
How did you find it? What was the first time you saw it and found it?
So my first time seeing it was, if anyone's seen this YouTube video, is the Uniqlo mix play video.
He just said that was his first time. Oh, shit.
Yeah, we get,
You sent it. You made
yeah,
it.
yeah.
With the white background?
Yeah, literally with the Power Ranger hoodies, before they
Yeah.
before Yumi got taken by Genki Sudo.
Okay.
Well, most of the squad.
I see.
So yeah, the first time I saw it, I was like, what the hell? What is this? It's just a bunch of guys just like. And I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm watching like 8 times. YouTube is like 2 years fresh, right? 2 or 3 years fresh.
Viral video, I felt.
Bro.
Dude, it was like literally the first and only video I saw, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want to be about it forever. And then somehow, by the magic of maybe just me living in LA, and I saw videos of Frantic, Mad Chad, videos of Jet, Tony Tran, just all the people that were like hitting popping different, and I was just like, dude, YouTube is so tight for this.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
You said that on the internet.
This is before that. This is before algorithms were just
That thing,
textbooks. So yeah. What's the other question? My major?
That was it. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you. Clocksan.
Howdy.
Lou.
I'm Clocks, and I encountered animation for the first time. I don't think I realized, I didn't hear the word animation when I saw it, or I felt like I saw it. I think my first interaction with it was like regarding robotic movement, and some of my first interactions with that were Robot Boys from Denmark. I think they were like a huge inspiration for me. I think I saw them do like this like move, like the neck thing for the first time, and just like watching that, I was like, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. And like I like became obsessed with like neck isolation. Like I couldn't dance at all, but I could like do this.
Yes! That right
there! And that was like my like introduction to that, and you know, I looked up a couple of the people. My roommate was like, "Hey, have you heard of Mad Chad?" And I was like, "Oh, who's this guy?" And I was like, I looked up some other people. I ended up like looking up like a bunch of dancers who had like really interesting textures. Tony Tran was definitely one of them. Tony has been one of my inspirations for many years, and it's really interesting because like the way I came to it and my experience of it like changed over time. So it's like while I may not necessarily, I think, consider like Tony Tran to be like straight like animation, like it was definitely like the gateway, right? That got me like really interested in like seeing other people, catching up with various Dragon House members. I got to know at the time it was like Poppin', John, J-Rock, and J-Smooth were all like doing a lot. Got me into popping, got me to connect to Machine Gun Funk, and that was kind of like my pathway into popping and like seeing all those things coming together. But as far as the word goes, like I didn't hear the word for anime. I probably don't think I don't know exactly when I heard the word. I do know, I distinctly remember a specific moment in time when on So You Think You Can Dance, you know, they had, I think it was the season when both Soul and Blueprint were on it, and they actually, they didn't introduce them as poppers, they introduced them as animators that season. And I think, like, while I may have heard the word like floating around a little bit before that, I think that moment like really solidified like, oh, there does seem to be a distinct difference between poppers who take this approach and like people who are like from popping or using popping techniques but just going in a different route, you know, which we saw a lot of at the turn of that decade basically. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Yay! Thank you! Clocks, thank you, Clocks! Who's next? Hey! Jeffrey, and the lights are right there. Go and sit right here.
Hi, I'm Fox. Hello, everyone. I am Jeffrey. I think my first view of animation was probably when I was discovering YouTube, when I was like 10, 11, somewhere around there. And I saw this video called Collaboration 2001. And it was seeing David Ellsbury moving. So I think that was probably my earliest memory of seeing like animated styles. I think the real foray into it was it I Love This Dance 2018. There was a battle, Blondie versus Mystique, which was actually also the first time I like really respected Crump. When Mystique crumped over Blondie's music. And that got me like really, really into micro movements. So then it was Blondie, also Tony Tran, Phil Garvin. I was just watching those videos all the time. And then come 2020, I took an online workshop from Jesse Sykes for waving.
Yes.
And at the end of the workshop, he brought up, oh, there's this guy on YouTube who puts out a lot of tutorials. His name is Cybot. So that's when I started to actually like know about animation. I watched those videos. Pretty much everything I learned was just from trying to imitate that kind of stuff. So that's my introduction to animation.
Who's next?
Hello. Teddy-san.
Teddy.
Hey!
What's up, y'all? I'm Teddy.
Teddy.
I'm Jay's roommate.
Hey.
Where's he at?
I'm right here.
Over there.
Jay's roommate. I love to give light shows.
This is like one of the best, but anyway, that's it.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so I've always looked to other styles of movement, not just dance, but other styles of movement for inspiration. And the first time that I saw what could be interpreted, I guess, as animation, Clocks kind of touched on it a little bit. The remote control video that Dragon House did, specifically the one that the first video that I absolutely binged, and I was like, okay, this is the musicality standard now. This is what musicality is in motion, but also the actual movements. And I guess that's more robot than animation, but I mean,
right.
kind of I mean, I'm not sure if it has the gray area clocks. I'm sure you can differentiate
That's,
for me.
that's what we're here to talk about today.
Right, exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Slide on it.
So, right, and I again, it wasn't referred to as animation, but I did see it, and I did correlate it to the idea of what animators have to do. I also watched there was a video that I saw. They were talking about creating a dog from CGI, and they talked about what would the fur look like, and how would the fur move in the wind, and how would the legs and the tail, and all those things. And I saw that, and then I saw these remote control videos, and I kind of put two and two together. I'm like, wait a second, this is this exact same principle. So I didn't necessarily know what I was talking about or what the connection was, but I understood it without the words. And drew from that, both from the musicality aspect and from the timing of movement aspect in my light shows and gloving. And then, actually, small aside to that too, I also was watching a lot of tutting videos on Gene talked about the early days of YouTube. I was watching a lot of tutting videos, a lot of, oh man, I unfortunately can't even remember it. That was 15 years ago. Yeah, 15 years ago, something like that. But this is when the best quality was 720. So everything was a little bit choppy.
HD, 720 HD.
Right.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. I watched those videos and I saw the timing of that movement, and that's what I studied to try and imitate. Little did I know that's not how they were actually moving. That was just the adjusted bit rate from the thing. So I ended up doing a lot of animation foundations without even attempting to.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until years later, mostly when I started hanging out with this guy, 2017, maybe, that I started to understand animation as a separate style, and not necessarily. I don't want to say understand in a scholar level, just understand it okay, I know what I'm not just looking at, cool movement. I can see the thread, right? There's certain for me, there's certain dance styles I can see the thread, certain ones I can't. For whatever reason, crump, it's really hard for me to see the thread. Sometimes I can do it at the higher levels, but on mid-level stuff, I can see it sometimes, but I will lose the thread. Anyway, off topic, but that was my introduction to animation.
And then our last but not least.
Oh, my last. Hello, do I have to go there?
I think the camera's on you now.
I have to go too.
Yeah, that's a nice background.
You good? That's a good
The
background.
blocks and everything.
Yeah.
Hey.
Very fitting.
Animation.
I'm just a background character. Don't look at me. I'm not a character.
Hello.
Well, I mean, you do have two of the NPC guys here, so
You're doing it right.
You're doing it right. We got the thumbs up.
Start going there. Only two? I feel like there's more than that in here.
These are two of the first guys that I saw do it. I'm Robotnik.
Maybe I know too much. No. I'm kidding. No, I don't eat. But hello, I am Nalu. I am an animator. Yes. Pay me.
How did you hear?
When do I get paid?
When was the first time you saw it?
First time I saw it, being that I am an Asian American that grew up in the early 2000s, I saw a lot of Jabberwocky stuff, but mostly I saw a lot of Poriotic stuff.
Come on, Poriotic.
Yeah. So, just because they did a Ryan Higa video. So it was like, oh, these guys are cool. And, I think I was in middle school at the time, so I was like, oh, okay. So I started following them, and then through that, I just kind of started seeing other things. And I think the thing that solidified me, that wanted me to do it, this is hilarious. When I was in 11th grade, I had a teacher who went on paternity leave because his wife had twins. And we had a substitute teacher. His name is Dr. Cook. Bless this man. He showed us every single Step Up movie.
No way.
Yes.
What?
Yes. In the wrong order.
Wait, was it a random order or backwards?
Starting with 2.
Because that's the most important one. Okay, go ahead.
She's not wrong.
I have to remember.
Now, 2 is hard.
Hey,
I think 2
Hey,
is hard.
maybe not the wrong order. Maybe went from best to worst.
Well, because it was like,
Most relevant.
because high school classes for me were like 45, 50 minutes long. So it's not like we watched the whole movie in a period. We watched part of the movie.
Oh.
Next time we came in another day, we watched probably a different part of a different movie. Did we know? Did we care? We watched the shit out of all the fucking movies.
You don't really need the storyline, I feel.
Exactly. You enjoy it. Yo, that guy's name is Moose.
Whoa!
That's sick. And then, what was the next question?
Just where you first saw it. And when
Just where I saw it?
Animation.
So you want to say Jabberwocky's Periodic Step
Yeah,
Up?
definitely.
Okay.
Those specific people, yeah.
And then when did you hear it called animation, or when did you understand that it was animation?
The term.
To be honest, I always thought animation was a substyle of popping from from dancing, because I thought it was just like, not a given, but like, it comes with it.
Right, it's always associated.
Yeah,
They're
and
together.
then I didn't realize that it was solidified as a difference of style until like the whole fiction J-Rock situation.
Interesting.
And
That's interesting.
and you know me, I've actually been in the dance scene a little bit longer than that. So it's like, for me not to know that was kind of interesting. But I thought it was a given. I figured when you pretend to animate yourself, it's animation. I thought all dance styles, especially when it came to under the sub-style of popping, was very literal within the style. Like how art styles are. And that's like the biggest difference between me when it comes to animation. Point at a chair right there. I assume someone's going to.
Is it your turn?
Oh yeah!
Yeah. Go sit on the thing.
Come on, B.
Yeah.
Of course you're not gonna skip you.
See me from here. What the hell is he doing?
Relax.
Is it Gatorade bottle?
This is
It's a new training technique.
It's a new training.
You have to isolate.
Train my fixed points.
dad box.
So my name is Bbotics. Brandon is my real name. I've been doing animation for about, I want to say 11 years.
Damn.
And then I found animation when, maybe a few months after Nonstop posted the famous video.
The
Pump Up Kicks. I saw that video, and I don't know what it was in me, in high school of 2013. I instantly was like, yeah, I'm dropping everything, I'm gonna do this. So I was a huge fan as soon as that video came out. And I was researching Nonstop, researching his crew, Dragon House. And then pretty early on, I figured out that they were calling it animation. So I didn't really know what that meant. I just thought, I don't see anyone else do this. Animation is like Dragon House dancing.
Right.
So, and then I started figuring out, it came from, popping, so, waving, all this stuff. I just thought, it was all techniques of, popping and just not doing it to, funk music. Right. There was a very distinct difference in the type of music, dubstep, and then, funk music, completely different. So I just thought, all that. I was one of those.
I thought I knew my friends.
Dubstep is different?
So for the first 3 years of my dance life, I would just copy Dragon House and copy all those dancers. Blueprint was my favorite.
To the black cave.
So yes, exactly. And it was only until 3 years after I graduated high school, I went to my first session, the one that Nalu actually hosted.
Northridge.
Yeah, that was my first ever session, my first time.
I did not know that.
Yeah, bro. So you had a huge influence on me, because it was only until I would go to your sessions, meet Jay, that I would see everyone dance in person. All the time I would just watch videos, watch people, and kind of research on my own. But it was only until I went to an actual session that I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be copying these people. Maybe I should develop my own style. So it was
not the vibe we got from you.
No, this dude would literally bring a TV and his Switch, and we would play Smash.
It was great. We need to bring back those times, man. It was great.
We're still doing them.
Yeah, I need to come back. It's so far, man. I want to come though.
You gotta bring a CRT. Like a big TV.
Oh my god.
This one right here. We'll bring this one. Anyway.
The deep TVs.
Yeah, so it was only until I think the biggest part of the next big thing that happened for animation in my own head was the fiction versus J-Rock. Yeah, or I guess fiction. It was a little bit before that. It was the animation battle that happened. Fiction and what's his name, Flat Top. They got into a huge argument. I saw that in person, and it was like, whoa, holy crap! This is a big thing. So I need to think about what animation is. And from then on, I was just like on my animation grind trying to figure it out. And then I heard of Cybot. And then after COVID, when Kumse was hosting the sessions, she was like, yeah, this is a Cybot night. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I've always thought these guys were like super scary, intimidating unicorns that I'll never get to see. I'm going to go. I'm finally going to go. And I went to the session super scared. Kumse looked at me. She was like, come on, bro, let's go. I didn't even know who I was. I was like, this is so nice. And everyone was so chill and not intimidating at all. And I met Cybot. And then that was like, now I'm definitely on that grind. I know what animation is. In my own head. What happened?
Now you're the scary intimidating.
The ball takes.
He scared me, so I get to scare you.
Say OG, not dad.
I can tell you right now, there's no need to be intimidated by any of these people. They're so nice. So yeah, that was my journey. I'm now very fascinated with animation for 11 years and still going.
Hey, that's what's up.
Anyway, I give it to...
Now we transition to our presenter of the evening, but also... What is your name, sir, and how did you discover this thing called animation?
First of all, thank you everybody for coming out here to listen to me talk. And you guys. And I appreciate it. So I've always been dancing. My parents always have music on in the house, so I've always been moving. But when I first saw Robert Moraine audition for So You
Mr.
Think,
Fantastic. Hey.
that was when I considered the switch.
Man, I play that video right now.
Switch. And I also, one of the first first things that I tried to do was this thing, right? And I started out like hey.
Close enough.
Yeah. So, and then from there, I just obsessively learned those moves. And then after seeing Dragon House, the next stage of my animation dance journey, and I had the pleasure of getting to see Cyrus and meet him when I was much younger. And that experience reignited my passion for it. Kind of like the nail in the coffin. I was like, all right, well, this is it. Like, I'm in it now, Wow. Can't go back. So it was fantastic. And so yeah, I'm also a Dragon House kid. 100%. Dragon House kid. Lived on YouTube, watched videos all the time, studied their movements, and yeah. So that's also the first, because up until then it was popping for me. Like I'm a popper. That's what it's called. But Dragon House was the introduction of animation for me. So yeah.
Nice. Yep. We got someone that says the House of Dragon. We the Hooper. That's what I'm reading.
I love the enthusiasm with which you read the rest of that message.
Someone wrote capital letters popping with exclamation points. And then Mr. Fen. No. It's a good exclamation point. It's a good one.
It has a happy
OG Winston says robot exclamation point. Okay.
Okay, so we're good to get going then.
Oh, yes. So
okay. So
what's up,
Winston?
OG Winston.
OG Winston. Yeah.
To start, I want to say that this is not me going, hey, this is what it is, and that's just what it is. No, not at all. I wanted to do this so I could gain clarity in my training, in how I teach it, and how I can stay true to animation in different environments, and that's what this has done for me. Training with this approach has helped me level up my game. Like, I can feel it and I can see it. So I just want to share it, so hopefully it can help other people as well. So yeah.
Hey.
Good to go?
Oh,
So if you want me to like press anything, I can just do that for you, so you can just keep presenting.
Cool.
And not worry about it.
Appreciate it, yeah.
Is it just this one, the space bar?
Yeah, I think he's a
Yes. You
Okay, so I know we just went around the room, so but I wanted to just ask everyone what their favorite animation move or technique is, and why. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Stop. Why though?
It's too easy.
Why is the dime stop my favorite?
Yeah.
It's because it touches up on so many other movement styles as well. It touches on almost every single style. Like the dime stop is the thing you use to enunciate a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So it's one of my favorite. It touches up on a lot.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
slow motion.
Yeah.
I feel that is the one thing that would be like, oh, they look unreal. Like when someone does a slow motion, and it's such a popular move, I feel as well.
That's true. That's true. Very true.
So that would be mine.
Okay. There's a saying in gloving that you're doing it right if your hands don't look like hands anymore.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, just to follow up, speed changes, just in general.
Speed changes.
Just in general.
Yes.
Just because you feel like it almost feels like you're controlling time. It feels magical. Love it.
Go on, Sam.
Nice.
No. I am capable of waiting my turn.
I think I would have to agree with B-Bodies because at least for dime stops, I feel like that connects to other styles that I do as well. And I feel like that's where that led me to the path of more like animation because like I do other styles and then I add dime stops in and I was like, oh, this feels really cool. Why not just go all into it? So yeah, that's probably my favorite.
Hell yeah. But any over there? Favorite move or technique in animation?
Oh, in animation. It's the best.
It's foundation.
Foundation, yes. Knowledge. This is the history of hip hop, kids. Bless you. I am also a huge lover of the dime stops, mostly because it has money in the name. But
Dimes.
but no,
that was cheating.
I am probably much more avid lover of waves, just because I have personal reasons for that, but to not go into that, they look cool. And you can really think of it as most movements can be summed up to really be one solid movement, which is really fucking cool. You know, and you can waste less energy doing so, just making a giant wave. And when I tell people that, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a wave runner?" I'd be like, "What's up?"
Stupid.
That's the dance. Give me money. You know. Dime stop.
Can I say?
Okay.
Can I
A
say
dime
two?
stop wave.
Yeah.
Okay, so
why I get it.
one.
You can have one for me because I don't. I'm doing it right now.
Okay, so one of them I can't do very well, but I would love to learn gliding or footwork. And the one that I love to do, and people have different names for this, and I don't know what the actual name is, but basically, you stop, but you shake every time you stop. People say it's dime shakes. People say it's bopping. I don't know anymore. It's just stopping and shaking for me. That's it.
It's actually a spasm.
It's a spasm.
Involuntary.
In answering this question, it actually made me remember when one of my other earlier inspirations for animation period. David Elsewhere in the video where he has that like orange sweat. It was like, what is it, collaboration?
Yeah, with a K or something.
Right, with the Korean like talent.
Yeah.
That exact
Mike Song
one.
was on it, yeah.
And I saw him do the tick across his chest
Nasty.
the first time. That I looked at that and I was like, I have no idea what that is. And that was one of the things where I was just like, yeah, this was cool. And I saw that, I was like, oh, there's a lot more to this stuff. And so that's why I would say like ticking or the concept of like moving things in a sequence of frames became like one of my favorite ideas. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Also, I forgot to do this, but thank you, Jay, for doing this.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah.
Sharing his space with us.
Pay him.
And also, I want to thank.
I don't know why I'm so money on
I want to thank Fox for starting the conversation on a broader scale and kind of giving me permission to be a nerd about it. You know what I mean?
It's a collective community conversation.
Yes. Let's do it. So, okay. So, thanks for sharing. I can't choose my favorite. I love it all. I love it all.
That's not fair. We all pick favorites. You have favorites.
I mean, if I had to though, like I would pick stop motion because it's like
It's everything. I don't know.
it's everywhere. So I want to go through what the plan is here. Okay. I want to introduce my definition. I want to introduce basically there's two main aspects of it. There's a free form aspect and a characterization aspect to it. And once we get through that, that's going to be the bulk of everything. And then I want to touch briefly on judging, animation dance battles, music, and we'll close out. Go ahead.
Do your job, Fox.
I was like, yeah. What's next?
So why am I doing this? Like why am I here talking to you guys about this? So I've always wanted a deeper understanding of this style, and for the longest time, it was me seeing people do it and wondering how, and not being able to get access to the information as to how. Only until recently, honestly, the past few years, have I been able to obtain that information, which has been fantastic, but it didn't really clarify what the dance is for me. So I'm continuing on that journey. That's a main motivator. And also, being what is out there right now, not being 100%, not scratching the itch I have for my understanding, and that's kind of a separate topic. But that's one of my motivators. And wanting more clarity in training and teaching, this is a big one. I think it's really important. I love animation, and I want to get better at it, but I wanted a structure to do so. I wanted a way, like a clear way to organize it and see how I can track my progress, you know? And clarity at animation dance battles. This is huge. When I go to animation dance battles and I'm talking to judges and I'm trying to figure out what they're looking for and no one can give me a straight answer, I get really confused and then I feel like I can't perform to my best ability. And it's a shame because the fact that we have animation dance battles now is fantastic, that we can showcase that. So I want to make sure that we don't let that hinder our ability to showcase what we do. So, next slide. Yeah. The definition. Y'all ready? So, okay, this is just the overall concept that I am basing it off of, okay? And I'm going to differentiate between animation dance and character animation. The dance being the dance, and the character animation being what we see in film, cartoons, and video games. Okay. Basically, what character animation does is brings inanimate things, like drawings, to life, makes them animate or realistic. So unrealistic to realistic, or inanimate to inanimate. And what animation dance is doing is appearing to, or create the illusion of being the inverse of that. We are animate and realistic just because we're human and we're alive. And we're attempting to make the illusion that we are not. Okay. I first heard this idea from RoboZilla at Udemy, so shout out to Robo, and it was re-emphasized to me through Jay as well. So, yes. So, the actual definition. Yes, animation dance is dancing with, because it's a dance, one of two things, or both things simultaneously. The first thing being free-form illusions of unrealistic motion. Okay? Second thing being illusions of animated or synthetic characterization grounded in principles of animation, or both simultaneously. Now, we're going to break this down. I just wanted to throw it out there in the beginning, and now we're going to dive into specifically this first part. Okay? So we'll go to next. So starting with this first part. Okay, free-form illusions of unrealistic motion. Let's see, let me go over here actually. It's a little bit more sense. Free form, what does that mean? It just means that it's not dependent on a certain form. It doesn't depend on a certain movement. It doesn't depend on a certain posture of the body to execute it. It can be applied to any movement. Okay? Illusion, simply a misrepresentation of reality. It appears to be something even though it's not. An unrealistic motion. Essentially is motion that deviates from reality. And we'll get more into what that means in the next slide. But basically this part of the definition, what you can ask yourself to see if a movement or technique falls under that part of the definition, you can ask, or put in other words, you can ask, can the technique or effect be applied to any movement? Does it create the appearance of motion that deviates from the real world? Okay? So, Jay, you're gonna do, you know this.
The 12
this
principles
stuff.
of animation.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I was introduced to this by Jay actually through classwork. You know classwork?
Yes.
I think he took a class from you, and you had mentioned the
Yes,
principles.
Robozilla and I did a class,
okay.
and he went to the class, and one of the principles is what we discussed.
Yes. So there are 12 principles of animation. I'm sure you guys can see as well. So. Basically, these are principles that were created from. I can't remember. Do you remember the
And
names?
it was like Walt Disney's his.
It's like Ollie.
I don't know the
Yeah,
name, but it's his people. They came together to form all the techniques that they believe brought something to life, a
Yes,
cartoon
yes.
to look realistic.
Yeah, and it's come from OG Disney animators. I can't remember the names, but basically they came up with these 12 principles that kind of guide them in creating realistic movement in their animation. And some of these are more emphasized and directly linked to animation dance than others, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So yeah, this is the next one. Okay, so starting with the free form part of the definition. So we said that this part of the definition is saying free form illusions of unrealistic motion. We have three main techniques in this section: frames, dimes, and speed control. So we're going to go through each one. Frames. What's a frame? So in character animation, a frame is simply a picture, a drawing. Okay. In animation dance, it's a single static pose. Now this is like a statue, right? But you also have your street performers that dress up. You know, they might be gold, and they just stand there.
Wow.
And they stand there, and they're really still, and it's really cool, and it looks fake.
Look, yep, right.
Yes, so that is what I'm referring to when I talk to a frame in terms of animation dance. Okay, so stop motion. What is stop motion then? I see it, and this proposal sees it, in terms of the illusion of moving in sequential frames. So the frame, the individual frame, is essentially the finest unit, and the stop motion is consecutive frames. So, like for example, like you have your hand, this is a frame, this is a frame, this is a frame. You want it to look like you're going from frame to frame. Boop, 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 right? This is just kind of an illustration showing like, so you have frame, 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 frame. When you put them together, it creates the illusion of movement, right? Okay, so stop motion, sequential frames. I see it as two different types, two main types. You have frame by frame, which is where each position is, you can clearly see it. So you have, you can clearly see like each position that I'm going through. High rate framing, also commonly known as Sinbatting, also commonly known as claymation, right? This is what you're talking about popping.
Right.
Okay, yeah, my bad. So yeah, but anyway, high rate framing, I determine that as where each frame is not as distinguishable. So like we were practicing, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're moving in frames, but you can't necessarily see each individual frame, right? It's like, but it still looks like you're moving through frames.
Right.
Okay? Yes. Oh, sorry, go back to the... So, and this is where vibration comes in. I just wanted to point that out. So this part here, this is how vibration plays in, and this is just saying that frame by frame, you're using high tension, high speed control as a technique. So, so that's frames. Now we have dimes. Okay. So a dime, commonly referred to as a dime stop. Dime is simply an instantaneous transition. Instantaneous meaning like instantaneous. So I don't know how else to say instantaneous. So, but specifically in terms of speed, direction, or texture. Okay. So you have dimes and instantaneous transitions. You have your dime stop, is what we're all familiar with. Stop. Okay.
Nice.
You have your dime start. You stop, and then you start on a dime, really instantaneously. You have your dime switch. This is kind of a new idea. This is kind of a new thing. But essentially, this is instantaneously switching between direction or texture. So, for example, like if I was doing robot and I had like a square, right? The dime switch is happening when I switch the position or switch the direction of my hand. Or in texture, like if you're, there's a lot you can do with this. But like if I'm doing like the vibration, and then I'm not, and then I'm doing it again, right? Like you're switching between the texture instantaneously. So that's dime stop, start, switch. So being that this is kind of a new concept, at least to me, I haven't heard anyone else describe it in this way. I want to more specifically compare frames and dimes. So framing stop motion versus diming is not really a word, but in this case it is. So framing and stop motion, like I'll just reiterate, illusion of moving between static position, whereas diming is illusion of instantaneous transitions, speeds, direction, and textures. Framing, the movement between each position is hidden, or it's the illusion of not being there. So if I'm just, clapping my hands like this, the emphasis is on each position, and then that in a diming scenario would be more like this. You can see the movement in between each stop, each dime. Right? You can execute a frame without moving. Because if I'm in a frame, I'm not moving. But I'm still in a frame. But I'm not diming. I'm not doing anything in terms of diming. But in order to execute a dime, there has to be movement involved. So to the last one, but to kind of demonstrate, so when we usually think of a dime stop and how I thought of it for a while, like if you're moving slow motion and then you stop and then you go, that's a dime stop. Kind of like how we thought the atom, and I don't want to get too scientific, but I am a nerd, so.
Do you?
True. Thanks, man. Okay. How they thought the atom was the finest, the smallest element, right? And they broke it open and found that there was stuff in it, right? So, being that this is a dime stop, I actually think that there's three things going on here. So there's the dime stop, the frame, and the dime start.
I like that.
So dime stop, frame, dime start, right? That's kind of my thinking. And framing doesn't involve vibration, where dimes do, in terms of, sorry, I had that backwards. Framing includes vibration, in terms of the high rate framing, and then diming does not. Okay, so speed control. We love speed control. So speed control in animation dance is simply using the speed of movement to create illusions of unrealistic motion. And this is done in three ways. Usually, typically, foundationally, it's done in three ways. Okay. So you have slow motion, fast motion, and constant speed. slow motion, I think we're all familiar with it. It's, looking like you're moving slower than reality, or than the movement pattern suggests. Fast motion is the inverse of that, you're moving faster. And then constant speed is appearing to move, this is mainly used in robotic. So constant speed would be like you're, right? Like your each movement is at a constant rate, okay? So, those three things to oh,
Sorry,
you
I
have a
have
question?
a question.
Yeah.
Constant speed, is it in a mix of fast and slow, or is it just something in the middle?
It's where's that question coming from?
Because we know what slow motion is and what fast motion is. Constant speed. So speed, like you're going fast and slow at the same time, or?
It's just you're maintaining a pace, like you're maintaining a rate of speed.
Okay.
Okay. So like for example, this would be going from normal to slow. This would be
okay.
normal to fast. And then this would just be constant.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It was mainly inspired with robotic movement. So, and this is kind of a new concept. I like it, and I'm still playing with the idea. But basically, I see frame, dime, and speed control. Put that together, you get glitch motion. You get a aesthetic that's very glitchy, spontaneous, using these effects, and that looks very unreal.
Sample.
What's that?
Sample.
Sample.
For the visual learners.
Yeah, for the visual learners. So like, the kids at home.
Pop.
So like, let's see. Yeah. So like.
Spontaneous.
Yeah.
Don't get impressed, keep going.
Nice. Right? It looks very glitchy.
Yeah.
I think it looks very glitchy, and we often talk about a glitch in animation. So I just wanted to point that out there. I do actually want to go back a few slides. I can do this. So I talked about the principles of animation. And I need to get a quick drink of water.
Oh yeah.
Can you send that this particular slide to everyone? It's just like, no, I'm just saying this particular slide should be everyone's like trading thing in their pocket.
This whole presentation or this slide in general?
This particular, well, we can all access your presentation still, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, I just fuck with this particular slide.
Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
This
So
slide is
yeah.
really cool.
So the two principles that I really want to focus in on are slow in and slow out and arc. And you'll see why in a second. But basically, the idea of slow in and slow out is what you're seeing here. That movement in the real world tends to have acceleration and deceleration at the start and end of the movement pattern.
Yes.
Again, a little bit of physics. It's because of inertia and momentum. Okay. As to why that is involved, you can research that. I'm not going to give you a physics lecture, but anyway, that's basically what's going on here. That's what's going on with this. And then arc is the idea that organic natural movement tends to have an arc movement pattern, especially human movement. So like we have the arms that are like attached, and very like me moving like this looks more natural than if I was moving like this. Right? So, all that combined, now I can go to the next. Okay. So, I say that to lead us into the second part of the definition. Oh, sorry, I just realized I needed to make one more connection with the. There we go. So, for dimes, I want to point out the connection between easing and dimes. So with the dime, you have a very sudden stop and start, whereas if it was more realistic, it would be more like, doesn't look as fake than if you are having a stop and a start. That's kind of what makes it look real or unreal, is the principle of easing. And then for speed control, you also have like the constant speed, which is trying to take away easing in your movements. And then, so we can go on there. So now we're into the second part of the definition. animated or synthetic characterization grounded in the principles of animation character animation, not animation dance, because that would be a circular definition, right? So, why do I distinguish between animated and synthetic? Animated character is simply a fictional figure brought to life through animation techniques. So, stop motion, CGI, any other type of animation. Synthetic character, I include this to include robot, AI, things like that. Because a synthetic character is essentially the illusion of a personality, of an intelligence. Okay. And then principles of animation, we've already been through that. So for this part of the definition, you can ask, does it look fake in terms of these two ideas? And is it based on principles of animation? Or is there a link to it? So the two most prominent examples that I see of this in animation dance currently are Android/robot/AI, however you want to put it, and NPC. These are by far not the only possibilities. It's just currently with the state of the dance, this is the most prominent examples. And we've already talked about the easing and the arc. So with Android, it's removing easing and arc from your movement. So you want constant speed. Well, for a very animated looking robot, you want a constant speed, and you want very angular movements. Okay. NPC, on the other hand, is the inverse of that. It's the exaggeration of easing and arc. So you have extra arc, extra easing. It's essentially hyper animated, and that's why it looks fake. So you have like realism, under animated, hyper animated, right? So, yes. Okay. Yes, before we get into this section, I do want to mention... No, yeah, you're good. You can go to the next section. But before here, I just want to point out, and I'll mention this again at the end, but the principles of animation, I highly encourage animation dancers to study the 12, or at least introduce yourself to it, and think of creative ways to use them in your dance. Because, again, the Android and NPC, which is two examples that I see are very common today, but I see those principles as a source of exploration. So just wanted to put that out there. So all that being said, how do we judge animation dance battles? And it really comes down to obvious things that we usually do in other dance battles. Technique. Being that it's a technique style, we always talk about technique. In terms of what does that mean for a dance battle, for an animation dance battle, I see it in terms of how well or how believable are your effects. How unreal do they look? And then range goes into the number of effects that you're showcasing, speed control, frames, dimes, Android, NPC, and anything else that falls in line with that. Creativity is where the exploration can happen, the originality. So you can take these principles that I've laid out to create new movements, new techniques. And that's where the creativity comes in. And obviously, you need musicality. We're not discussing what is musicality, but I think you just need to acknowledge the music if you're dancing. So that'll be an important part. And a friend of mine suggested that essentially, so you know how in breaking they have a certified judge for each element of breaking? You could do the same thing here. So that way it's more clear as to what the judge is looking for, and they can more objectively judge it, rather than having a bunch of compounding variables all at once and can lead to bias. So, animation music. What music do we dance to? Yeah, lots of thoughts on this. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. So, I also think you can animate to anything. I saw Chibi animate to Metallica at the camp, and it blew my mind. I saw him. You can just you can do it to anything. Very valid. It's not defined by its music like other styles tend to be inspired from, like certain music. Animation's not like that. But I do think that there are certain characteristics that highlight the style and pair well with it. And I think, bro. He's actually glitching. So I think that it's important to acknowledge what those characteristics are so we can know how to best showcase the style. Okay? And these characteristics that I've noticed are unpredictability in the music. That kind of goes into like the glitchy nature of the dance style. Staccato, which just means like very staccato. It's versus legato. I know. Okay. So which is very sharp, very, very, very sudden, which obviously I think pairs well with the idea of framing. Very staccato movement. So you need a staccato sound to pair with it. Dynamic, having a lot of textures and layers in the music can give you a lot to play with, and that pairs well with the style being very free form and creative. Highly characterized, where you get, kind of the idea of becoming a synthetic character, and that can be anything for you. But I think having kind of like the audible inspiration can really help. And it tends to be electronic music because, at least my theory is because it breaks the bounds of analog. And like our movements looking to be fake, EDM or whatever type of electronic music is obviously synthetic, right? So, so I want to point out, and these are by no means like the only artists, but I think they're a good place to start. You have Edit, Troy Boy, Flume, Tipper, and Thriftworks.
The Holy Six.
No. That's not it. I'm just saying, if this is new information, I highly recommend checking out these artists. So yeah, that's all I wanted to. So conclusion.
Woo!
Yes.
Just yes.
Conclusion. I just want to summarize. I know I've been talking a lot, and we're going to open it up for discussion, and we can go back through things, whatever you need clarification on. So what do we do? I introduced a definition, a proposal for the style. We went through kind of the 4 foundational elements of the style based on this proposal, which are frames, time, speed control, and characterization. Talked about how we can use that to judge animation dance battles, and then touch briefly on what musical characteristics pair well with the style. And I have some closing remarks to close us out. Clock is glitching, y'all. It's about to happen someday. Okay. So, closing remarks, and these is more just like things that I realized during my journey of thinking about this. Things that I realized that I encourage other people that want to dive into thinking about the style in this way to consider. The first one being subjectivity and objectivity. I often caught myself finding things that are subjective, objective because of my bias with the style. Growing up in the style, being very influenced by Dragon House, I took things that they did and like things that just opinions I had about the style as fact when it was opinion. It takes a lot of critical thought to know where that line is, but that's something to consider. Knowing what is dance general versus animation dance specific is a big one. And I did that by, if I had a thought about animation, I would test it against other styles or watch other styles of dance, watch locking, watch house, watch even like modern, contemporary, and see if it was dance general or animation specific. And then requirements for determining founded, So.
I just have a question because I come from the contemporary background. Did you find when you were watching that, did you notice, because I personally think being in that world, we take a lot of these things, but we don't know where they come from because we just saw somebody do it one time. Did you find that you had trouble being like, I think they're trying to do this right here, but the technique behind it, not like in a judging way obviously, but you're just like, did you have trouble like finding dance general versus animation specific?
Are you asking like, did I see overlap?
Yeah.
In a sense,
I would say.
You've touched on this, Box, but you mentioned kind of like your analogy of a milkshake with berries on top versus a berry milkshake, right? I find that
I know what that means.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'd like to elaborate.
Sure. Yeah. So the idea is whether you have elements of animation sprinkled in or decorating your dance versus it being the actual foundation of the dance.
Yeah.
I found that in all high-level dance scenarios, like with just high-level dancers, very experienced dancers, I always usually found elements of this in there because this is a very technical style. It's very technique-based, and dancers of all types, they have the body control and the awareness. They show and use these in their style. So that does make it tricky to determine what is the foundation versus just element of dance.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the last part, and this is kind of like how I started, by just looking at the overall visual characteristics of the style. Things like I noticed that it tends to be more minimalistic, isolated, staccato. That's kind of a way to get your feet wet, to kind of see like, okay, I'm going to watch an all styles battle, I'm going to watch a locking battle, I'm going to watch a house battle. Now I'm going to watch animation videos. What are the noticeable differences that I see? And then I also want to reiterate that the ideas here and the techniques are based on principles, and I want the principles should be the guiding thing here, not necessarily the specific techniques. I think the techniques are obviously good ways to start with the style, but not limiting the style to these techniques, just thinking about the overall, like the underlying principle that they have. And using that to guide further exploration and development in the style. And then, one more. Now we can discuss, so we can ask more in-depth questions. But yeah. Now you can pick it apart and go.
Let's go.
A lot of talking.
Yeah. We need this talk. Noise.
You guys continue. Still live, right?
Dance woke up.
Again, this is a proposal.
You're not cleaning
This is
anything.
not end all be all. This is not saying that this is it. I personally have found that this has helped in my training, and I still need to test teaching it to other people. That's still something that I need to practice with it. But I know for me, it's helped my training. It's helped me gain clarity in my actual dance as well. So even if it just helps one other person, I call that a success. So, and if you don't like it, it's fine. That's okay. That's cool. Because at the end of the day, it's an art and it's about your expression. So, burning questions. Anything off the top? Any clarifying questions?
I want to say this is good. I like this. This is tight.
Bro, thank you.
Yeah, it's like someone that's been,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, someone that's been like in animation, like my majority or all my dance experience. Like there is like a lot of things I've learned that just is and has no name to it. Like for the years that when like we started together, we're just like, what is this called? I don't know. But we just pass it on literally just visually. So when we used to train, even like in these sessions that's like I've been with you, we've probably like literally been just a bunch of bees, just been like, hey dude, what do you think of this? And been like, never really like, what is the constructive name? So I kind of like that some of these are like being like elaborated on and like the physics of it is being explained, because like as a style as popular as it is now, it's kind of weird to be like, we don't have a name for 80% of our style. Yeah, like it's undeniable that like a bunch of people are like fucking following us on it, and like everyone loves and like other styles take from it. But it's just super weird that we like constructively a lot of it's just like follow and train.
But also, we didn't need names for a lot of things because for a long time it was just part of popping. Right?
Yeah.
This idea of putting attention and focus onto what animation is, to be more precise with what we're doing, with what our words, with what our vocabulary is, and our intentions, comes from the idea that before it was just popping. But the culture has changed, and now the popping community has determined that no, just this is popping. And then now all the other sub-styles within popping have to be like, wait, what are we now? because we're not seen as like equal citizens of popping anymore. Like when I would talk to OGs and before, they would just be like, anytime they would see like from their perspective, it was like, oh, this is a waving popper, and this is a robot popper, and this is a funky popper. Like, they were all just flavors of like the same idea. And now that popping has become more codified, it's made it so that everything else that was just under the quote unquote umbrella term,
Has to find its own home,
right,
essentially.
has to figure out who they are. So we're finding that we're seeing a lot of this kind of more intentional thought in terms of what are we doing here, who what is the vibe here, and how has it changed over time? Because there are specific generational differences, right? That's why it's important to have these discussions. It's important to remember that we're not the first people to like ask these specific kinds of questions, right? Like there's a long history of this from like Black communities in like Oakland, Northern California, those kinds of things. And I think we also have to recognize that the culture isn't just in the past. The culture isn't a museum where it's locked away, unable for people to interact with, right? Like the culture is also now. Like the people who are doing the styles, who are throwing the events, who are having nerdy get-togethers in their apartment, trying to figure out, like watching a TED Talk from a friend of theirs, like, or a stranger, like complete stranger, just because you like this style, and also because we're kind of agreed on this idea of like, we don't know what we're talking about. Like, we individually might have an idea of what we think we're talking about, but then we recognize that we start talking to other people, whether it's in our same city or across the country or in another country, we start finding that like, hey, we're not on the same page. And it's becomes very, very visible very fast. And I think that's why it's important to start having these discussions, right? Like, because previously it was just like, we didn't need names for things. Because the name was popping.
Yeah.
It was just a different kind of popping now, right? You do this move and you do that move, and it didn't matter what the name is. And I still think to like some degree that like the nomenclature isn't that important.
Yeah.
It's just like, as long as you're on the same page. You might use dime switching or dime stop or whatever terminology you use, but as long as you recognize, as long as you have that like translator in your head to be like, oh, this is what this person is talking about, and then when I go to this country and they say this word, it's like, oh, it means the same thing, right? Like, I think as long as we start recognizing like what the foundational principles are, then whatever words we have for them are still going to make sense, right? I think that's why it's important to start having these conversations and to have these presentations and doing this kind of stuff, to specifically have discussions about it so we can be like, oh, that's what you think? And it's like, oh, here's this perspective, right? Because I think this is the next section of it, right, is, at Unimate last year, Unimate 2024, they had a panel. They had a panel on robot animation. And I was very fortunate to be there. And after a bunch of people had asked their questions, I raised my hand and I was just like, hey, what's animation?
Oh.
And there was like some avoidance of the question. And there were some things that were like, some people gave like technique-based answers. Some people gave answers where they're like, I don't want to answer that question because I feel like it removes the freedom from animation. And in my mind, I was just like, oh, okay. But at the same time, it's like, wasn't the whole point of foundation? Like, foundation is explicitly limited to become the basis by which a style is able to develop, right? And like, people are pretty comfortable saying like, hey, this is the foundation of this, and it's just these things. Everything else is on top of it. And it's like, every other style has that. And it's like, when you come down to animation, it's like, people agree on the dime stop's important, and that's about where the similarities end.
That's not
Right.
even animation specific. The dime stop.
Right, and that's why we want to talk about these kinds of things, because it becomes, especially when you're talking about it from a perspective of a battle per se, right? Like, what are we actually looking for here, right? There are certain questions that we're going to have to answer. Is waving animation? Is gliding animation? Is robot animation? How do you know? What are we using to determine these things? Are we just going for, are we going to take the past's word for it? We can. That's a total, completely valid option. There's a lot of people who are like, this is what it was in the past, or this is what it was set up by OGs, and this is how we're going to see it. And like, I totally respect that. I feel like in a different setting, right? Like, a lot of us came into animation without funk music. Like a lot of the music that you mentioned was specifically like EDM or like post EDM, like experimental bass kind of music, and you know you'll talk to a lot of the OGs and they're like, animation is the thing that you did all these kinds of techniques to funk music, right? There was even the whole electro funk era, right? That like became like known specifically for like really, I think, popularizing the animation at that time. And so I think that's why it's, I think being able to recognize that those moments happened doesn't mean that we have to somehow pretend that we weren't all influenced by a completely new series of sounds, by a completely new soundscape, right? And I think it's important for us to be able to speak up on it and just say like, hey, yeah, you like this, which is great, but I also like this, and I would like to see more of the music that, you know, we listen to, right? So in general, like, I think like a lot of these questions are like really important when it comes down to like how we perceive this, and I'm really excited to hear like what other people have to say, and just to share our thoughts and observations. So yeah, but thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Yes.
It was just a quick thing, kind of adding on what you were saying about like the OGs and like seeing what judges wanted in animation or robot battle. Because I'm self-taught, I've always been a visual learner, and that goes for any other style that I do, which is waving, popping, hip-hop, whatever it is. So I just base off of visual learning. Now, when I ask like people I look up to in the animation world or robot world, like to explain to me some stuff that I want to look for in my own dance, or I just want to look for in techniques or foundation like what we're talking about right now, again, they don't give me a clear answer, and to me, I feel lost, and I don't know if it's either that I don't understand what they're saying and that I don't have a clear understanding of what I'm doing, or it could be that they're not explaining themselves right, and I don't want to think that, because I mean, they know what they're doing. Like, I've looked up to them for so long, I've seen them dance, and like they're dope. But when having this kind of discussion, I have a clearer and broader understanding of now what this dance is and what I can do to better myself, and which is what you said, like, this is what you use for your training, and I want to use it for my training too, because like I said, I never really got a clear answer from most people that I've talked to, and which is weird because I did get more clear answers with other styles. Like if I were to talk to a hip hop judge or someone I looked up for hip hop or popping or waving, but I could never get it with animation or robot, which kind of sucks, but that's why I'm glad we had this discussion and this presentation. So I give my thanks to you too.
So just a few follow-up points on that. I want to point out that the way I see definitions is not as a way to put in a box. It's a way to gain a deeper understanding of, to then expand upon. That's my sight there. Shoot, I was gonna say one more thing. It'll come back to me. But yeah, just that. Yeah.
Just while the floor is free, I think it's. I love waxing philosophical about anything. It's really fun. But I also think that we also have a responsibility when having these kinds of things to also determine the most effective way to communicate information. Because as much as I would love to, whenever someone like Ivy comes up to a judge, I would love for her to, or other people like her who come up to judges, right, in the future, to be able to get that answer without needing a TED Talk. Now, this is all very helpful to start that discussion. And I think eventually you'll have to get to narrow down the Wikipedia article down to something that someone can remember.
The elevator
Like
pitch.
really, yeah.
What would be another dance style that has that?
What do you say?
What would be another dance style that has that?
Walking, whacking.
I mean, I think breaking.
Breaking,
what would be
breaking has the shortest one ever.
Yeah.
Which
Right?
is
Top rock footwork power freeze, and then done to the breaks. Like usually, if you like that as like a simple declarative idea of like how to communicate what you're doing to what music, right? Like there are terms you need to understand, right? You need to understand what each of those words actually means within the definition. But if you wanted like a really super simple, short, that answers most of the questions that people are going to have about like, oh, what is breaking, right? That's a decent explanation that you can give in like 10 words.
I would
or less.
argue that the 4 points here could be like treated as that.
And that's where we're heading, right?
Yeah,
we want to cultivate this idea of like, how do we explain what we do? Like, I'm sure you've had this thing where it's like, oh, you're a dancer? What kind of style do you do?
And just like,
and you have to explain to them. It's like if you use the word animation, they're like, animation? I've never heard of that. What is that? And then you have to be like, yeah, good question. And you have to be like,
You pull up the slideshow.
yeah.
So usually the way if I'm in that situation, what I usually say is, are you familiar with stop motion animation? Do you know what that looks like? It's a dance style that was created out of the imitation of that. And then you can get into specifics. But that's usually where I start, because usually people have seen a stop motion animation film in some capacity, so that puts a visual in their head, and then it's okay. So it's a dance style that mimics that and puts it to music.
There's
that
a
would
question.
be like obviously a shorter thing, but.
What's going on? Do you have a question?
Well, a comment from the chat. Connor with a K1 says, I definitely agree with you, Collin. Definitions are great and they can help you form the ideas, but dance is all about creativity. To me, there is no exact correct way to dance. How does that... Okay, there are correct fundamentals, but everyone dances in united ways, which makes dance amazing. Sorry, unique ways, which makes dance amazing.
Yeah, we're not defining art here. We're not defining what is dance. That's a separate conversation. We're defining what makes animation unique and how can we. The tangible questions are like, how can we train, how can we teach, and how can we judge battles? That's really where the motivation comes from. What is dance and how do we? I mean, that's kind
already
of
been
on the
talked about.
topic. Yeah.
Right.
But thank you for that.
Yeah, teaching and judging is like probably the biggest reasons why I think this topic is so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like we're starting to host battles, and now people are performing for money, or even just performing to see who's like on top and just to improve on the skill. So
I mean,
it's really important.
Usually when you look up a dance style, you see where it came from, what music is it, the steps, the communities it came from. I totally get like paring it down into like a concise thing, and I feel like my version of that here would be, oh, it's dancing with the illusion of unrealistic motion, and obviously that needs
That's just an incredibly
explanation, but
overrated.
that's the elevator pitch, or in terms of more common terms, it would be the, like I said about mimicking stop motion. Because, and by the way, I did my best to represent the history of animation dance and its evolution in essay I wrote. It's in my Instagram bio if you wanted to check it out. I'm not like promoting anything. Like it's like you just take a look. If it's anything,
I'm actually
you know.
super down.
Go there, and I have a lot of links to videos and stuff of like OGs and everything. So I highly recommend
I like
that.
that. That's super tight.
That really wasn't the discussion here. It was more about like my specific proposal, but I have some context in that.
So, like, check out my thesis.
Right. And also thank you to everyone who I had conversations with and helped me put that together. But anyway, sorry, that was kind of a diatribe.
There was like a moment, like I think you were. I don't remember if you like left for Vegas when this happened, but there was a moment where a lot of animators were uniting under the idea that we're just considered like these dancers that use heavy focus on body control. I don't know if you remember that.
There was
like a short couple of years that we weren't like, you're an animator. It was just like, oh, you're that guy that focuses on body control. And it was just, we were definitely definitely united under this like, all right, maybe we could like float this.
So remember how I said like how I noticed in all situations of high level dancers, of highly skilled dancers, I saw elements of animation?
Yeah.
Because it's basically taking body control to the extreme.
I think in general, it's also being able to, not just for judging, but for other dancers to be able to point it out. Like other dancers can point out breaking. Other dancers can point out locking or crump or like literally any other style. I went to Summer Dance Forever maybe 2 years now. Anyway, I went to Summer Dance Forever and I found that there was actually I was able to witness more animation in every other category than popping.
Yeah.
From what I considered animation.
That was recently, right?
Well, 23, yeah.
Okay.
I think at this point, so that was 2 years ago.
That kind of makes sense because around that time, I'm not going to out this OG, but there was a time when I was at an event and I was like, damn, I missed the prelims. And he goes, nah, bro, you shouldn't be in that thing. That's not for us. And I was like, damn. What the fuck? Wow. And he's like, me and this person been kind of talking about animation for a little bit. He was like, been kind of like giving me tips on it. And he just went off. It was like, that event's not for us. And it was a clear popping event. And he was just like, you're not meant to be in there. And I'm like, what the hell? And I didn't expect him because he's usually like a dude to like, you know, like we always should be supporting our community. But it wasn't long when we were just like, all right, so we really are part of the scene when like a lot of like OG poppers were like, animation pop.
Yeah, and it really becomes noticeable. It's I think a lot of people who align themselves with illusionary dance forms or animation, related fields, any substyles under popping, right? People started to be feeling like they were second-class citizens in the dance. Like there were people who did hitting and boogaloo, and then everything else was not as good, or like seen as good, to the point where like friends overseas, like I have friends who would like were really inspired to tut, and then other teachers in like her community, or like a specific teacher came like in her community, like pointed her out to their students and basically were like, don't do that. Like specifically talking about like watching her tut, or like her practicing tuts, and like pointer like, and it's just like this weird like discrepancy.
It's the ice maker.
and it's just, I think it's important to be able to, the more awareness we can bring to animation, the more people can be like, oh, that person used animation. Like the more we can get like either like other dancers to start recognizing where animation is, at least a little more consistently.
Yeah.
Right? And to the point where, like, I said this about Summer Dance Forever, and that's not like I'm not saying anything about the organizers because they don't have any control over that. One of my favorite memories of that event was the absolutely massive, like 10 plus hour animation cipher that happened outside from all the animators, people who were interested in animation, who left the building, left the event, and started animating outside. And it's not because that the event is amazing. It's a wonderful thing. But this is the reason. I'm not saying this as a knock on SDF. I'm saying SDF is an amazing, incredible event, and for maybe one of the first, at least for the first time for a lot of people, right, in the region, there were enough people to actually have a legitimate animation cipher with music they wanted to dance to, and people who would respect them for what they did. And the reason I know is I didn't stay there for the whole 10 hours. I started off the cipher, and I was just like, all right, I'll see you guys later. I left to grab dinner, and I passed by, and they were still going. And I was just like, that's the thing that tells me, like, I keep hearing that there's like, oh, there's not that many animators out there. And it's like, I think the idea of there's not that many animators is actually misleading.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just feel discouraged that there aren't as many people because they don't see the events. But they don't see the events because they don't either make them or they don't go, right? And so it feels very like, what is it, chicken egg sort of scenario. But I think the truth is that there's a lot of animators out there. I think there's a lot of people who are really interested in exploring animation, whether they're just learning about it or whether they've like seen it for a while, right? And they just want to get more involved. And so I think just giving people tools to understand it, giving people the tools to like recognize like varying perspectives on it, and how different it can be, like from like one demographic to another. Because I think that's going to be important as we effectively create awareness of our identity.
Yeah. I will say that's one of my favorite things about animation. The community, we're so well connected through just discussing or through dancing that I don't think I've seen that with any other dance style, like me personally. So that's why I like animation, mostly because of the community, more than the dance.
But also there's like hey, stop touching me, dog. There's also like, not to be like poppers haters, but there are like
Robozilla chimed in a while ago. He said, the thing is, the style is created based on visually imitating movies / ideas, which already in film has principles, so those play a big part in what we need to pay attention to for narrowing a definition. Narrowing a definition. But it also combines aspects of dancing based on the time it was created. I think that it was back a little while. You guys were kind of in the flow. I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure that Zilla was heard.
Yeah, and I if I understand that correctly, but if I understand that correctly, I think that's where the principles of animation come in.
I believe so. Yeah, it was right when you guys were scrolling about that.
I also feel like there were whether they're consciously made, right? Like consciously paid attention to, as far as like the principles of animation. I feel like there were people who may have been using the principles, but just calling them other things, right? Because the system that you brought up was developed by Disney. Mm-hmm. It wasn't necessarily brought up specifically through the dance community. Yes. So there may be like other terms and ideas that have come and gone in the past.
Claymation's a clear example of that.
Right, yeah. And the specific kind of claymation was Dynamation, right, from Ray Harryhausen.
Right.
Actually, not claymation.
Oh, okay. It's.
But anyway, sorry. That's a technicality.
Right. Yeah. Yes, there is a difference.
Yeah.
There is a difference.
Are you saying about Dynamation and Claymation or just?
So claymation actually came later. Stop motion was first.
Right,
Those are
right,
the
right.
figures.
Claymation is the material. Which
What's
is
that?
The material.
Yes, it's
yeah.
It's purely it's a thing. I'm just saying, like I get the thing, but anyway.
Did you? Also, random thing I looked up and.
Oh, can we see you in the camera? Jump in the front so we can see.
Yo.
So handsome.
So
yeah, sure.
So something I looked up. I was watching this documentary on Ray Harryhausen.
Oh yeah.
A documentary about him, and it talks about his process and I guess the people that did the production of the films. And apparently there was the Sinbad films. Before the Sinbad films, he was doing dinosaur stuff only.
Yeah.
He was doing like those stuff. But then apparently it started to die. They needed something different. Like it was a fad. So later on, this guy was like, let's look at like Arabian Nights. Let's look at like Aladdin, those stories. And they were looking for new mythical creatures that they could pull for inspiration. And they were like, because they were thinking like, what else can we bring to life except like King Kong, Godzilla, and more things. So they did that. And to make the film come out.
Hey, look at me, man.
I found something. I don't know what's going on.
It's just my love.
Okay, I appreciate it. So they were gonna release a Sinbad film, and they needed to say it was something new. Like it's not stop motion. They're using, and the guy that came up with the term Dynamation was because he looked at the dashboard of his car, and they were called dinoramas, or they're dino something. It's basically the dashboard of a car. It's part of a car. They were advertising as dino something, and he was like, Dynamation instead of animation or stop motion. We're gonna call it Dynamation. And then when the film came out on the poster, it's like Sinbad and Seven Boys in Dynamation. It was just a word to make people be like, oh, but there is no like Dynamation, Claymation. That's not different. Like stop motion. Stop motion. Stop motion. All right. That's all I gotta say.
What do you think about this?
I'm curious about what he was going to say.
What was it say? What was it?
About the pop.
Yeah. No, okay. What I meant to say, I was like there are like vets, like poppers in the scene that are like, they're sharing, like, they're taking the time to be really dope teachers that happen to be like sharing strong elements of animation, if not just straight up animation, who are also just straight up poppers in the scene. So like, I hope it's not like poppers hate them, but it's like, no, it's just, there are like, I think one of the things is like I'm sure, I mean everyone here does this, but the whole thing of like sharing who we trust as teachers and the different like 8 to 10 teachers that have like influenced our style, because that's definitely one of the other things is that we probably have like 8 to 10 teachers that have influenced our style. Like we don't look like just one of our mentors. Like
that's so true.
Like we can like, unless you're like Tableau, who can just call you out based on like your style of waving or like your style of like robot. It's like most of us, like we've trained with like the same people. We look very different, but it's like being able to like label like each of our teachers what they're fucking dope at, and then just like knowing that they're responsibly sharing that history that like also influences us is something we should be doing.
Yeah, and I like to jump on like not hating on poppers while we try to figure ourselves out. And you know, I like to think about what you said, talking about the girl that was studying, and why that teacher might have said like, don't do this. And it shouldn't be something that we should be afraid of, like expressing ourselves. You know, something as nerdy as like really diving deep into Dynamation or like stop motion and just getting really weird and nerdy. I think there's value in that because of the community of people who are also nerdy and weird. We're all being weird and nerdy together, and that's what makes it dope. So I think it's totally fine. And
there's a lot of weird things.
Yeah, and yeah, I think there are a bunch of anime dancers out there, and they're probably hidden because of that. It's because like when you go to a popping event, it's like, oh, they're not going to appreciate this really nerdy thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to practice popping so I can feel like I'm a part of the community.
We do used to be just in the corner of the event to be like, this is a dope event, and then we're just like bro, my first like 5 events is like all the animes I looked up to, just being fucking weirdos in the back like I'm just like look up to these guys.
Yeah.
Like, they were weirdos and nerds, and then now we're weirdos and nerds, and we just get passed it on. That's
Oh no.
It's just you. No, I'm just kidding.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Two out of three, or just do it at once? Just one. Okay. Wait, rock, paper,
Wait,
scissors.
on three or on shoot? Wait, this is very important. This is very important. On three or on shoot?
Okay.
That is very important.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Ooh.
Down.
Alright, 2 counts.
My question was that with animation, I'm hearing different. I know I kind of just walked in, but I'm hearing things of different people doing movements, and they're like, "Oh, I don't. This might be animation." They don't know. And this question is also Maddie, because you said your background is modern, contemporary.
Yes.
Wow.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you do that one more time?
5, 6, 7, 1 more time.
I didn't get it on camera the first time.
And tap dance. Okay.
That's where I started. That's Maddie Core for you all.
Okay.
Nope. Sorry, you got to do it again. For the people, you know.
For the people. It was the dead
The viewership went up, by the way. The viewership went up, by the way.
Just spiking viewership.
So my question is, with your background in modern and contemporary, when you see this presentation, you hear these techniques and these ways of movement, is there anything, there's two questions, is there anything in modern and contemporary that you find similar? Like, you know, I see that also, what they're doing of this like unreal movement. That's my first question. And the second question is, would you say, I've heard other people say it's similar to Buto, B-U-T-O-H, it's like something in Japan. I don't know what I'm saying.
The dark Dance of Darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a two question. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I originally asked the questions, because when you said, oh, I was looking at other styles, I was like, I wonder how many things he's seen in a contemporary video that are in something, and then we like go down. That's that. So yes, I do see a lot of similarities. I have not like an issue, but I'm starting to become acutely aware of the fact that people just see something in a video and then they automatically add it in without really knowing what it is. And I feel like that's what contemporary dance is really muddy right now, I personally feel, in that we don't have, it's kind of not codified like you said. I wouldn't necessarily be like, I don't know, this is this is called the box walk. Like, we don't really have that yet. So it's interesting for me seeing you all starting to discuss and kind of try to lock in what animation is now, because I feel like so much happening over in this corner. But it's interesting for me to watch you all kind of be curious about trying to maybe put it in a succinct language now, which I think is really cool, because I feel like contemporary will be in that stage maybe in like 10 or 15 years, because right now everyone just, if it's not a defined style right now, they just put it under contemporary fusion. Contemporary fusion is a really big thing right now, and that's anywhere. I took a contemporary fusion class today, and it was to 16 Carriages by Beyonce, and we were like doing stuff here, and then we like broke into like, and then we went into like this whole like this section, and so I was like, what's happening right now? But it was contemporary fusion, and like people were wearing shoes, people were in socks, people were barefoot, whole plethora of things. So I think right now that's kind of a muddy term, and not necessarily muddy in a bad way. It's just like we also haven't really defined. There's people who just move in interesting ways, and I think a lot of people find contemporary because like people who maybe aren't technical, but they want to try like a more technical based class, they'll be like, oh, let me try a contemporary fusion class, because I think a lot of people who teach contemporary fusion have different backgrounds in different things. Some of the teachers I learned from have more hip hop backgrounds, but then they also like grew up at a studio. Like I grew up at a studio, so they have both of those things to pull from. So it appeals to someone who maybe has more of a street style background, but then they also are like, oh, if you want to throw a leg in there, there's that. But if you also want to do something else there, there's that. So it's like an all-encompassing thing, which is really beautiful. But at the same time, it also can be like, what actually is this, and where do these things come from? Because I'm like a big history person. I can't say I'm the best at learning history, but I do try to know where things come from, because tap dance is really rooted in like a lot of, obviously it translated from Africa. I'll go into a whole spiel on that later on. But like that has a lot, it's a really culturally rich dance genre that everyone should know about, and a lot of people don't know that a lot of steps that we do now come from tap dance. Again, whole other thing. So very, very long-winded answer to your part one question is
part one?
Yes, part one is that yes, I do find a lot, and that's one of the reasons I was so excited to come here tonight, because I have been suspecting. I feel like this is some kind of popping, waving animation technique. Like I've heard of a dime stop before, but I didn't know what that was. Somebody said that in class. Some people have said something about speed changes rather than, and I don't know if that's the same as something else. You said something about some other type of speed thing. My brain is full right now.
Speed force.
There you go, thank you. So I wasn't sure if a speed change was the same as that. It was described to me as just like you go from like slow, fast, or fast, slow, or whatever. So there's people who are like sprinkling little bits in there with knowledge, but it's mainly just, I think the contemporary community, we look at it more as textural, and that's how we describe it. Yeah, so we'll describe it as like, oh, I want you to think of moving through honey, or I want you to think that there's a strobe light in front of you, and that's what you're doing. So we describe it texturally rather than, okay, do this name. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
I know there's like 42 bonus facts in there for you, and you're welcome, everybody. But yeah, does that make sense?
I feel like you and I had that textual conversation years ago.
Probably. I feel a lot of people talk of animation as texture. Like people will first be like, it's like being like different textures, changing your textures. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's interesting. Because we were like just talking about what's the range, and it's like, when you talk about the range of your dance, you're just naturally going to talk about like the amount of textures you can.
There's so many. Right. It's all different ways of looking at it, because you can say time. Like if I'm like, okay, boom, 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 I'm focusing on like the distance between my dime stops.
Yeah.
Or I could be like, it's a ball bouncing off a wall, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. It's the same. I did one way, but I also did it the other way. Two different mindsets coming together.
Yeah.
So like I could say.
And those are all completely valid, and like if that's what inspires your movement, like 100%, that's awesome. But it's conceptual, therefore subjective.
Right.
Which is the thing. And I'm not saying that this is completely objective at all, but I'm saying that for me, it's more in that realm. So it makes it more tangible to me, rather than using a conceptual approach as a way to define it. Because I was also thinking along the lines of texture as well, for a while.
Yeah. And? Yeah, enjoy.
Wait, before we let other people talk, is there anyone over here on the shy side?
No.
I want to.
Oh yeah. Who hasn't talked? That's a good question.
Yeah.
I haven't heard you saying that. Yeah. Oh yeah, you would next. Yeah.
I wanted to ask though if there's any clarifying questions that are needed. Or, something maybe was a little bit confusing. Or
Like, why are we here? What are we doing?
Meeting the universe.
Like just specifically, if there's anything that needed further clarification for understanding.
Just in consensus.
Unless everyone understood, then that's good. I don't know.
I would say a good idea would ask you, Maddie. Do you feel you understood the style more from seeing like did it feel clear?
Yes, actually, and it was really helpful because I was again able to identify things that I've seen in like contemporary classes that I've taken. I've been like, that's where that came from. I understand now. So yes, as someone who is brand new to animation and doesn't know anything about it, would I be able to concisely be like, hey, this is animation? Probably not yet, but I feel like that's again kind of what we're all here for. And I also think that when you define something so much that it does kind of get limited a little bit. Because us as humans, I think we like patterns and we like boundaries, and so then we get very uncomfortable when those boundaries get pushed. So when something starts having boundaries, I do feel like sometimes a little bit of the exploration is lost, or it tends to be discouraged sometimes. But yes, as someone who doesn't really know about animation, it was a very helpful way to be.
Yeah, and to give more clarity on like the overall view of animation, like it comes from, like we mentioned, mimicking animated characters.
Yeah.
So the underlying principle is unrealistic motion. The illusion of unrealistic motion in real life. And the 4 things that I listed out are kind of 4 manifestations of it that I see done most commonly, taught most commonly. And so that's why it's like a foundation, but it's not necessarily like that. Only these techniques are animation. But yeah, just as long as the underlying principle is clear, then I think I see that as a source of like development rather than restriction. But yeah, I'm glad.
Is that for movements?
So for basically foundations for the style as it currently exists, it would be frames, dimes, speed control, and characterization. The first 3 are free form, and characterization is more form based. So yes.
See, and as someone who's outside animation, you just defined it to me right there. If I walked up to you and I was like, hey, what is that? And you said those 4 things, I'd be like, sick, dude.
Okay. Well, see, and plus you're coming from a dancer perspective, so you can kind of interpret and understand what I'm saying, right? So that yes, different perspectives, different ways of explaining it. So yeah, okay.
Maybe let's go.
I mean, if it's still on the same thought.
No. I was gonna vert slightly separately. So if you have something on topic, you first.
Oh, okay. So I've been grappling with some thoughts over like just this year so far. So hopefully I'll be able to like explain all the points that I've been thinking about. And the basis for this, I know we didn't want to talk about like what is dance, but is there a difference between animation and animation dance?
Yes.
So in your view, it would be yes. So if you look at Collin's document, there are different schools of thought that you can think of animation from. And I was interrogating Jay on the elevator about...
I didn't know the interrogation.
Behind my back, I was just animating life.
I was smiling.
What are you telling me? Yeah. And
where's the trigger man?
His school of thought is from the technique point of view. My school of thought seems to kind of be on the traditional / technique side. So gears in my head. Come on, think. Right? Yeah.
Good posture, deep breath.
Words. Use your words. Take your time.
Yeah. So B and I were talking to Tabo at one point this year about like where is the dance and animation dance, and one of the examples that he gave was if we think about 2-step, right? We have the movement of the legs and maybe a movement of the arms, and if you just have the arms, right, you can't really call this kind of movement dancing, right? But you can simulate the illusion of the dancing part of this 2-step if, let's say, you raise your shoulders diagonally, right? So even if your legs aren't actually doing the 2-step, you still have this illusion. You strip down the 2-step into what constitutes dance in the 2-step. And if you want to animate that 2-step, you apply the techniques. So if we talk about the technique school of thought, we're applying these techniques on top of the basis of what this dance is, right? And in this case, if we're talking about things like gliding, waving, all these different styles that seem to be falling under animation, is it just an application of the animation techniques on top of these styles? And I don't know if it was in Clox's video or if it was your interview with Clox. One of you mentioned this interview of Pop and Pete, and it was a woman in Pop and Pete sitting on some stairs. I know the exact video, but I also couldn't find it. I was like, I was torn up inside. And I think he said his point of view of all these popping styles that are considered popping, boogaloo, scarecrow, toy man, these are all individual styles, right? And within the umbrella of popping, you're applying the technique and the mindset of popping onto these other styles, right? So in this case, if we're talking about things like the styles within popping or outside of it, that we can apply these animation techniques on top of, is animation dance itself just an application of animation techniques on top of this like stripped down basis of what dance is, right?
I would agree if I'm understanding. The technique is put on top of dance movement.
Yeah.
No matter what, as long as the movement is dance, and you put the techniques on top, it's animation dance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so crazy because I kind of was gonna say the same thing in different words. I actually, it's crazy. I was like, I was saying the exact same thing. I had a similar.
Could you?
No. Check this out though. I want to put a two-piece terminology on you guys, right? Kinetic logic and or kinetic reasoning. The key or one of the keys of animation, if I'm understanding correctly, one of the keys of animation is the ability to apply kinetic logic of, if I were this, how would it react in physics in space, or how would it react in physics of you were talking about surfaces like moving through honey or textures, things like that. How would this react with these surfaces or textures in there? So it really is just the exploration of kinetic logic and reasoning applied to different styles like popping, waving, and things like that. Because you can pop and wave and have it be popping and waving, but as soon as you add a focus and a specificity on the kinetics or kinetic logic, it can become animation.
I'd like to point out, I think it's really important that as we go through have all these discussions, that if we're looking for definitive statements, right? Things that are definitions, things that can actively help us better understand, more clearly understand what it is that we're talking about. We want to not just provide the definitions themselves, but then also attempt to break them. So when you take a definition, right? I think the idea that Teddy just gave about so you call it
kinetic logic or kinetic reasoning.
Yeah,
either.
The idea of effectively using your imagination to create concepts based on physics, right?
How something would move with these properties.
Yeah. The idea is we want to be able to understand that it's important. The thing to remember is that it's also important to be able to communicate that logic explicitly. Because you can have an idea in your head about what you're doing, as many of us have had earlier on in our dance careers or dance exploration, and then you watch the video back and you're like, wow, that doesn't look anything at all like what I thought I was doing, right?
So would it be expression of kinetic logic then?
Well, I think part of it is just being able to be the explicit communication, being able to to me, dance is communication. And so this goes part into my own personal definition of dance, right? It's just creative communication just through movement rather than words. And so when I'm doing any concept, right, from my perspective, if my audience did not understand it, it doesn't matter how well I understand it up here. If they didn't understand it, that concept isn't necessarily as relevant in the way I think it is. Not that it's not a good concept or a bad concept. It's just this idea of whatever we're doing has to be communicable. Or the way in which we communicate it must be easily interpreted by those with whom we are communicating.
Jay and I actually had this conversation a week and a half ago. We were talking about what defines a successful artist. And the sentence I gave him and this not just any dance, like movement art, painting, whatever. Wow. The definition of a successful artist is being able to communicate your intention through an artistic piece with absolutely no provocation or explanation at all, and have it be understood by your audience.
Yeah, and within degree, there may be degrees of understanding within it, but I think greater whole.
And to clarify with that, if an artist when they make something, if they intended to be open to interpretation, then they would be successful with that piece if there are multiple interpretations that people feel like passionately determined. I'm like, no, this is what they meant, and have people having disagreeing things. Like if I wanted to make an ambiguous piece and I said nothing about it, and people said, oh, he's portraying like trials of adulthood. Another person is like, no, actually, it's just about ice skating, and they're both passionately villainous about what they saw, and my intention was to be ambiguous. I am successful. Case in point, if my intention is to convey a message, I'll use a very simple example. Kendrick at the halftime show, there were a lot of messages that were very, very specific, that it was very clear what he was trying to say in a lot of things, and there were a lot of people who understood that very easily, i.e. he would be a successful artist of specific intention versus ambiguous intention.
Yeah, and a lot of that intention is personal choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to create for yourself the definition of what successful means. But as far as we're just talking about definitive statements, right? When we're organizing collectively, right? That's what we're doing here. That's what this kind of like engaging meeting of the minds, like why we're opening this to discussion is so that we can share the ideas and terminology that have impacted us or helped us better understand this, so that we can start basically coming up with co-creating agreements so that we can begin to more easily understand each other and then spread those ideas.
Commonly understood knowledge designed specifically to be easily digestible.
Yeah, not just for people in our community, but outside as well.
Yeah, and then when you mentioned about like communities, everyone has different tastes too. So even the general public, they can appreciate as deeply as like the dancers in that specific dance can, and that's why there's just different levels. Not meaning they're superior or inferior in levels, but more just differences in perspective. But,
Yeah. Totally.
Yes.
We all at some point had no understanding of dance, and we saw something relative to animation, and we were like, ooh, like what is that? Like I don't have the words or the understanding or anything. So, but even if we don't like mentally understand it, there's a part of us that like feels compelled by it. And I think the more invested we get into it, right? Usually when you get into something, there's like this whole like kind of like a pipeline of being like, oh yeah, these are the techniques and this is what you do and this is kind of the goal, and more or less like the intention is such and such and such, and these are the people who've come before, right? And this is what they thought, right? And like we have some of that in animation, but I feel like in this day and age, there's just like, we haven't quite, there are differences and certain shifts in perspective, not in terms of like being antagonistic, but just like a generational shift of how people dance, how people interact, how people communicate, and that has affected the animation community. And I think it's important and relevant to start recognizing that all these different pockets within the community see things slightly differently. And I think being able to give ourselves the at least, if not the terminology for it, at least the basic underlying understanding of like, oh, when they're talking about electrofunk animation from that perspective, it's like we understand that. Or it's like, oh, if you're talking to someone and they're talking about a specific school of thought within animation, like a different kind of basis, right? It helps us to be able to understand their ideas a little bit clearer, and to also, recognize how the community is all connected. Yeah.
I did want to point out one thing. I mean, because this whole thing was about training, battling, and just basically understanding what this dance is, or what this technique is. But exposure of animation, or the virality of animation through social media, or like through YouTube, through Instagram, through TikTok or whatever. We mentioned this one time. Jeffrey mentioned this to me one time. I didn't realize this until he showed me a video, that there have been people that have a huge platform, have a huge following, that would categorize as doing animation, but they would edit their videos to make it seem more like more authentic. You know what I'm saying? Now, now the thing is,
the topic.
More not animated?
no, like they would
I
see.
brought it up to you. I saw your post and then I brought it up to her.
Now,
Yes.
the thing is,
I'm gonna stay quiet.
they look.
I'm in the dark. Y'all don't know what I got.
They look
I'm just nodding.
more like how do I say this? They don't look lifelike anymore when they're actually doing it, which looks cool. But if they're using like editing techniques, then is it animation? Are you actually doing animation? Are you? And then that's when people, when they see that and you see the comments, you're like, man, this guy's dope. He doesn't look real, but then that takes away a lot of the technique.
Well, it's kind of like putting on makeup.
Yeah, basically.
Well, I have
It's like taking steroids. Okay. And you can do it. It's fine. But what I've been seeing is that the people that are using that become very popular, and then when I see them not using it, they're not actually very good. And then the people that are very good are being overlooked because. And then the people that are really good start using the effects to become popular. It's just a vicious cycle.
And then they describe themselves, I'm an animation dancer.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or sometimes they don't even know about the community. They just know that it makes them popular.
But that may be their reason for being in that, right? Not everyone is coming in from it from a perspective of, I want to learn to dance. Some people are coming at it from a perspective of like, oh, I can make money making these videos.
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying it's hard for me to watch them be popular and have crappy technique, and then watch people with immaculate technique not be able to get over 1,000 views on their video.
And then the thing
That's
is,
rhythm, maybe.
That's a
when things go viral, like the majority of people who are gonna consume that are people who don't know anything about the dance.
Yeah.
And that's like the trend, and then they'll consume it. Whereas like if you have the Olympics, they have breaking the Olympics, everyone hated it because they didn't understand it. So even if you give them something new,
Well, they hated it
those
because of
people are
one
gonna be
person that
interested.
made it.
Yeah, but that's why I brought it up, because the exposure of animation and the
The rest of
virality
it was
is
great.
through that instead of like what he said, people that have amazing technique but they
Oh,
don't go
yeah.
there.
And one last point is I often get people that send me a video of someone that's using the effect, and they're like, "Can you do this?" I'm like.
Videos, right?
I mean,
Raise your hand if that's happened to you.
Yeah.
Like,
for real.
Can
For
you
real.
do? And it's just like,
can you do this? And they're like,
it's just like another video. Of
and then you have to, but then that's an opportunity to educate them on what's actually happening.
There-
you know?
I will also say there's a certain level of responsibility as an artist that if you're fucking doing shit like this, because now you'll see like TikTok dancers that wanted like their whole goal is just to like tour with whoever, and you'll see like I forgot which, like Amari Monster or even I forgot which choreographer put this out, but they're like, you TikTok, like their choreographers are calling them out like, you TikTok dancers think that you can keep up with 10-minute sets doing your 30-second TikTok. There's a certain responsibility as an artist, the level of like what your platform is versus your goal.
Mm-hmm.
And if your like platform is these 30-second videos, but your goal is like performing on stage with Kendrick for like 10-15 minutes, but your entire training is this, there's like an individual responsibility that you gotta exercise. So that might piss us off, but at the end of the day, we already know, like, we already have like held ourselves to that standard. So it's like, there still has to, like, you know, we can consume the content or we could just be like, that's cool.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're either gonna learn
Or
that
they're
they
not.
want to do it, that they want to keep doing it, and it could just end up being, that's it, that's all they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
not the problem. The problem is that people don't know that they're using effects, and they're using us, like they're holding that as the standard of what we should look like. And then when we don't look like that, it's not.
So then would the red line of okay versus not okay be if they're using effects and it's very clear by the effects that they use that this is unreal, and you can see by the effects now you can appreciate it for the art.
It's not even okay, or just say that you're using effects in the caption. Say, by the way, I'm using effects.
VFX animation dance.
The reason why you're saying that they should have I'm using effects is because you feel animation dancers, I don't know if anyone else feels, because I did the topic, that animation dancers are not getting the same attention compared to people that use the effects, and that's an unfairness. Is that
the general public can't tell the difference between a dancer using an effect and a dancer not using an effect? And
right?
It's not
Especially
fair.
because it's online and seeing stuff like digitally and in person, two completely different things.
Sorry.
Where's the conflict in people not knowing that it's not animation dance? That's my guess.
The psychology of the apps. To cut you off there, but the reason that the disconnect happens is because of the psychology of social media apps. When you go onto every social media app, every single one has a slightly different psychology and there's a slight variance to it. And so if you're not going there specifically to appreciate good dance videos, you're not in the psychological mindset to fully internalize an amazing dance video if you're just in scrolling mode. It's a literal psychology block. So as a dancer that's just putting up amazing dance content, you are actively fighting against psychology that is designed not to absorb your content. Whereas with the effects, where it's like there's a pattern interrupt because wait, that's not real. And not necessarily saying the dancers aren't unreal, because there are some that are. But the key is the ones that do go viral without the effects are the ones that are able to find that medium and actually break through that psychology. I'm not sure if he uses effects. But there's a guy, Kamon7, Kamon 7.
Sometimes and sometimes not.
Right. So I actually use him as an example of like you can just do basic tutting and have it look amazing. Your threshold is just very, very high, and he's a guy who exceeds that threshold with very basic moves because he does them that well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like I see a lot of high level dancers that look
unreal,
but they use the effect anyway because it becomes more popular.
Right, so Kamon7 is an example of someone who does break through that psychology because they have found a way of like, okay, I am able to fully convey the awesomeness of this move through digital mediums.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I want to point out is that as much as we want to point out to algorithms or the psychology of an app or anything else, if our techniques or things aren't as well received, that's our fault.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta be the ones to actually step up and like make more content or find ways to make it interesting, because some people have made their stuff interesting by adding this particular effect, right? But there's lots of different ways to make your videos more interesting. It's like, I think there's a lot of people who've been able to, like, whether you decide to use filters or not, you're just playing the social media game, right? But I definitely think that the majority of the issues surrounding any confusion in animation, like anything from what it is to can people recognize it, like on a lineup of dances or describe it or anything, all come from the same idea, and it's this idea that we're not showing up yet. It's like we have this presence where we acknowledge within our own community what it is, but a lot of us are just kind of like hiding in caves and being like, man, like, it sure would be nice if there were more animation events. And it's like, well, throw an animation event. It doesn't have to be Unimate, right? Like the lot, Slim Boogie's battle games started in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And then enough people started showing up to those mock battles that were just supposed to be for practice that he was just like, well, I guess I'm just going to make a real battle out of this. And then thus that event was born, right? And it's like, so I think in that way...
Axiom the same way too?
What'd you say?
Axiom in Maryland, that didn't happen the same way.
Okay.
Both the digits, finger type?
Yeah, that one.
It did grow, definitely. It did grow.
But it started as like, it wasn't like in someone's house or their garage.
Like a house,
or
garage,
like that.
and
And
into
it was
a
like, oh, this
studio.
is too many people. We have to do a thing now.
Yeah, I think so someone who I know, I just wanted to really finish my earlier point.
Sorry about
someone I know who does, who intentionally shows that they're not using an effect is Robotnik. Dr. Robotnik specifically puts a clock that's a running clock behind him so that you can tell that he's not using speed up effects, right? Like, this is a great example of a way to use creatively social media in a way where you can show that you're specifically not using a filter, and it is 100% your ability to move your body in a controlled way to create that effect, as opposed to just editing yourself. Yes.
I agree with that 100%. Now, we all have been inspired by somebody, like either you were watching it from a movie like Step Up, or you were watching it from, I don't know, like a show on TV, like, I don't know, like dance competition shows, whatever it might be, there was inspiration from somewhere. Now, in this generation, my problem with it personally is they see the inspiration from those people because they become more viral, right? And when they see that, that's what they deem it should look like. And let's say they want to learn it after seeing it, but then when they're trying to learn it, they're like, man, I don't look the same. It's kind of like what you said, like makeup, or when women edit their bodies or their faces to look a certain beauty standard, and then girls look at themselves and they're like, why don't I look like that? For me, it's the same thing. Like, you're looking at the video, you want to learn exactly what they're doing because it looks cool, or you just find an interest in it, and then again, you get disappointed in yourself because you're like, man, I can't do this, and you just give up instantly because you're like,
Wait, but hold on, you can do it. You could either put the edits and the filters, or you could learn the style.
no, but that's the thing. Some people don't say that they edit the video. That's why they don't know what's real and what's...
Right, but if someone's interested in learning it, right? So let's say I'm like, oh my god, this person's crazy, look at the way they move. I later on find out that they're editing their film, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's just when people don't say it, that's when I have a problem with it.
There's a responsibility between an artist and consuming and making content, and that's like the gap, it seems like.
But isn't that also part of their gimmick? That people don't know if it's real or not?
I would say that's the like responsibility in consuming and being skeptical, like, oh, this is a dope video, and not immediately taking it as representative of a community. And
I think if you want, sorry,
he doesn't even.
Versus the whole,
so they don't even know there's an animation community.
Yeah, but there's what she's saying is like there's a lot of people be like, this must be this sometimes. I've seen it too. Like we've all done, like, people definitely come up to us and be like, can you do this? And they'll show us a video. Like, my coworkers do that every other day.
Of a famous, very
like whatever. They're like, hey, can you do this Usher move? And I'm just like,
got you, right.
Fuck it, let me just do that. And they'll like send it to their 5 friends. Yeah,
if they say they edited it and they want to like work with editing videos like that, that's completely fine. But what I mean is that they hold a standard that's unrealistic, and they need to use more, stuff to make it look unrealistic.
The silver lining.
Yeah.
It'll just help us. It'll just motivate us to be even cleaner.
Well, that is true.
We're about to be even cleaner
That
in
is
the technology.
true.
Let's
And
go.
I'll be honest, though, there's a lot of people that use social media or that like are on these apps. They're like teenagers, and that's why I say like they're starting out in their journey to dance, and that's what I mean. Like, if they don't feel like they get it right, then they can give up easily without knowing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, it's just because, like, the general audience, they always have an intention of, like, I just want to be stimulated. And not many people come from a place of deepness or, like, deep appreciation for something. So not everyone has, like, that wavelength. Like, when they watch something for the first time, they're like, I want to fall in love with you. It's more like, oh my god, he's so pretty. I want to copy it.
Shiny. I think sometimes people will take whatever pathway is relevant for them to discover something within themselves. I think even though I didn't grow up around dance, I was still I saw certain things and I experienced certain things, and I was just like, once I found out, like, I didn't start dancing until college, and so like once I like found out that there was like a breaking crew on campus, I was just like, I gotta go. I gotta figure out what this is. Like, I don't know what it is. But it started from like watching movies like mindlessly and just being like, oh, that was cool, right? Like, or like seeing, like going into like early YouTube and seeing like really early YouTube tutorials on like, here's how to do a can opener, and just like really simple stuff. I genuinely feel like the people who are curious will figure it out. Even if they are, like, the people who are, maybe they'll have that moment where they're like, why don't I look like that? Like, they might come to that conclusion. But if it's really interesting to them, if it's something that they genuinely feel interested by, they'll keep going. Like, when I started, when I went to that first breaking club, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, but people just stopped looking me in the eyes at the club. And it's like, I don't know these people that well, but eventually I just got this feeling where I was just like, I feel like they don't want me here, and I have no idea why. And I kept trying to like be friendly or just like talking about it, or even just go into a corner, and I would just get like mad hate for like no reason. I could have given up. I could have just been like, yeah, this isn't for me. But instead, I was just like, well, I couldn't get my fix there, so I was like, well, I'm gonna go to YouTube. And then I looked in a YouTube comment of just like this video that I was watching, and like, I can't wait to go to Homeland on Monday night. And I was like, Homeland, what's Homeland? And so then I just looked up what Homeland was. Like, I wonder if that's in LA. Found out that it was here in Long Beach, nearby, and realized that they had a funk night on Monday nights. And I was just like, well, that's like quite a drive for me, but I feel like I should go do that. And that's how I got involved in the community. Like, if I didn't kind of experience this like hate, this like random like catching like stray, just catching stray hate.
Was that in the public, like a public club, or was it?
It's at a MacArthur Community Center here in Long Beach, like on Anaheim Street, and it
That
was.
way.
Yeah.
That way.
Oh, yeah. I don't live here.
I know. I got you. I was helping you out.
Get him.
I was helping you out. There you go.
That way. That way. And so, basically, it was just completely open to the public, and it was totally free. It was not a club. It was a community center where they had a DJ spin funk all night, and it was hosted usually by Iceman, and he had like a couple of teachers who would show up and teach free classes. It was sometimes locking with Tiffany Bong. It was sometimes different popping classes, and then they had like breaking on Tuesday nights. Right, it was the same thing. So it wasn't even a club. It was literally just having a free open session that they got funding for. I think from the Long Beach City, and that was how I was introduced to so much of the actual street dance community. Was through having like a cultural hub like Homeland. And so like it.
What the other club that you were at?
Sorry.
Was that with freestyle dancers?
That was a collegiate club, not to be confused with like right? Like it was like like an organization, a collegiate organization on campus that was like just student run, and they had their own thing, right? And so that's what that was. It was just a student org. Yeah.
Student org that knew dance already, or thought they knew dance?
They were mostly breakers, and so it was just one of those things. It was one of those things where there was like one or two poppers in the club, in the org, right? And they kind of showed me the hit for the first time, and I was like, what? I can't even get my muscle to flex that fast. And so it was just this crazy thing of just being like, how do you even do that? But yeah.
We have a question from Robozilla. What is the guys on the couch to the left experience in learning animation so far?
Which one?
Which one? Left, so I'm assuming.
Yeah. I'm assuming we haven't heard.
No.
You want to go first? You want to volunteer now? Oh, can you repeat the question?
Okay.
What have you learned so far?
Tell us all you know.
Tonight?
What have you learned so far in animation so far? Experience in learning animation so far.
Oh, God, it's such that's a big question. A shitload. Seriously. Like, okay. I've learned
basic groove steps. I've learned timing. I've learned to use my imagination more. To give myself permission to do that. Permission to be goofy in my dance. To become more authentic that way. Then there's obviously the techniques, which we all covered. And then to basically, there's a couple ways. You can either try to impose yourself on the music or just let the music dictate what it wants you to do. So I've learned a lot since I've gotten into the community, which was through Innovate. Then I went to the Bridge, met Bebotics and Tabo, obviously met Robo, Fox at Innovate. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. It's a lot. I mean, I can't even, like, from where I started to where I got to is
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I could chime in too, because the question was, how was there another?
The question was, what have you learned so far in animation? And I believe, I'm not sure if Zilla, if you're saying from this presentation specifically or in general.
I answered like just
in general. What could you share? Or could you also just share as well from today, from the presentation? Did you feel there was any something?
So a lot of stuff. It just kind of brought back a lot of the stuff that I've been taught through Unimate.
Okay.
For example, a lot of these topics we've covered, just not necessarily this lingo. Speed changes, dime stops. I know we used the concept of frames. It gets into poses. A lot of it was really good refresher on basics. I did really like looking at the Disney basic.
12 principles.
12 principles. That I had not seen before. I got a really good, it made me smile to see the walking man.
Yeah,
because
keep it light.
I'm a bit of a video game geek. I've been doing it since the 80s. So, the first one was 80s graphics, the second guy was 90s graphics, and after that it was 2000 graphics. It was like this nice evolution. So, yeah, that was really cool. And then just the different definitions, because I've heard so many different definitions. One Clocks was playing with the illusion of time. And then you provided a couple of others that made me think a little deeper about it.
Do you have any questions, like clarifying questions?
No, I mean, because I get what you're saying.
Wow, okay.
No, I totally understood what you were saying. So, you were talking about more character. Immediately when you say character, I think Robo. I believe Robo said he's got anywhere from 27 to 34 characters.
He told me there's 6 different Zillas.
There's 6.
So
I haven't even met all the rest. I've only met like 5. Damn.
And then you've got the other side of it. Because I always look at it this big long continuum of where you want to go from just character or just a free form. And
Right.
you kind of go between the two.
Nice. Okay. Well.
I guess I don't know if this was the intention of the question. I thought the question was speaking to like our experience learning animation, because I almost feel like I don't know if it was leading into like how is animation being taught compared to like other dance styles, because I guess one thing to put in perspective is like weirdly I've taken like more house dance classes than animation classes, even though I would not describe myself as a house dancer at all. So I feel as if like my thought on that is like like if with us being here today, like is like how animation being taught like moving forward, like something we need to think more carefully about, because like for example, like from my experience is like I've always just learned it by just being around certain people. Like I feel like, I need to learn something, I just need to be around them, I need to be at their session or invite them to a session I'm hosting, or just like at an event, I see Robo, I'm like, hey, let's do rounds, or like I invite you to session. So to me, that's always been like my way of learning, see what people are doing and trying to imitate that, seeing what people bring into battles at Unimate, and then seeing like how can I reinterpret that for myself. That's always been my experience learning, but weirdly I've never learned animation through like a class setting.
Right.
So I wonder if like that was like what the question was trying to lead into, which I think it would be a very interesting thing to think about moving forward.
It's a really cool insight,
Nice.
actually, in how you're learning.
Nice.
What do you teach in an animation class?
That's one of my biggest, like one of the main inspirations.
I would say, is there anyone that hasn't shared? This could be a time now to share, asking Collin specifically about the PowerPoint. Any last, yeah? Aki? Well, Aki, it's hilarious because...
Good morning, sunshine.
Aki, hey. Aki, what are your thoughts on animation?
My thoughts on animation.
Let's hear it. Ready?
I think it's an illusion, right? That you can give this perception to people, whether you are real or not to the person, right? So if I want to imitate a robot, you're gonna give this perception to the person that you're this robot in reality. It's like, I don't know.
And what did you think of the presentation?
I thought overall, like, it really, like, dials in on what animation is to people who don't know what it is. And I think it focuses on that perception, even though, like, you know, a lot of people, when they ask what it is, I feel like they can come back to this, you know? And a lot of their questions will be answered to a lot of people's answers, too. So, I thought it was a pretty good presentation.
Dope.
So who won?
Clock.
Judges.
Any just bringing it,
I did want to just say,
bringing it kind of back, kind of tying it back to Collin in a sense.
There was something that you mentioned, and just for clarification, because there was a lot in the presentation, but I don't think, if I remember correctly, that I didn't really hear you elaborate on the concept. You touched on this idea of schools of thought in animation,
Yes.
and I want to know what that means to you and how you use that idea.
yeah, I have some more detail about that in my essay, which you can just go to my Instagram bio and click on that. It's a Google Doc. I have a section about the schools of thought. I came to the schools of thought conclusion, like, before you had mentioned it, Clocks, but then that like even solidified it further, and then you introduced me to like other schools of thought that I had not been aware of. I think that's just the reality of it, and I think it's completely valid. Just because I didn't vibe with the existing schools of thought as well, doesn't mean that someone else can't. I think when it, like in terms of battle specifically, it just needs to be, and this is like kind of all battles, honestly, but especially with animation, with it being a little bit up in the air right now, I think being clear as to what the intent is for the battle, so that way people know how to be successful in it, right? And they understand why they weren't successful in it if they didn't make it. Like, if I go to a battle and they're like, oh, it's just being weird, and I'm like, I'm probably not going to be very successful. Because that's not why I do the dance. That's not, not saying that's an invalid way to approach it, but I think that it's just about clarifying and keeping, making sure everyone's on the same page within the community or at an event, and knowing where you fit into that. Yeah.
Could you give us some examples of a certain schools of thoughts that exist in your head right now?
Sure. Yeah. So again, that's it's right there. I have a section in the essay, but basically I boiled it down to there's a traditional school of thought. Okay, so that's like the animation characters, the Sinbadding, ticking, clock, constant ticking, going from frame to frame. and character and storytelling. That's basically like the OG traditional school. And then you have the electro-funk slash, and again, this is my understanding. I don't want to speak for people. This is just kind of a more informative thing. The electro-funk and Dragon House schools are more based on like taking elements of popping and putting them to non-popping music. That's kind of a crude summary. And then you have the conceptual schools, which is where character, Klox's time illusion approach fall into play. So those are like the other, how I see the other schools as they currently are, or as a, there might be more, but I'm just saying that's like most known. Yeah.
Cool. That's good. Any other last questions? If not, then I want to thank you, Collin.
Oh, no, thank you.
I want to thank you for real for this. You did. What was this, like 2 hours? A 3 hour live?
For those that are remaining, for those that have survived, reach out with any questions anytime.
Yeah.
Always down for questions like after the fact and everything. It's always reach out. I'm always available to talk about this stuff.
You can look on his website.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Collin, for coming, sharing, presenting all of this information. I feel, my opinion of being here and witnessing this, this definitely could be used for teaching class. I feel like this is something that makes it much more digestible to people outside of the dance community. I think definitely a lot of us have shared comments about like when they're like, what's animation? And it's like, oh, it's the stop that, you know. This definitely making it digestible. Very nicely structured. Pictures. I love pictures. I'm like a kid, you know, so like I feel like that appeals to it as well. And I hope that these conversations continue and more people build off of things Clocks have shared, you have shared, you know. So yeah.
Yeah,
thank you.
One more thing that I want to say is I've been experiencing this with having these conversations with people in my Utah community, my family, and you know people here in LA. It's beneficial when we are communicating for the sake of gaining a better understanding of, not discussing for the sake of right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's my intent here, is to gain a deeper understanding of, not to say my way or the highway. And even when I'm talking with my friends and they're challenging my ideas, it's for that sake of making sure that I'm translating it well, my idea is solid, and gaining a deeper understanding. So I just wanted to say that let's focus on that, you know, going forward.
30 minutes.
Public service.
Last question someone just asked. Why is there a separation between animation and robot? Why is there a separation?
Why is there a separation?
Yes.
So I see it as part of animation. For the longest time, I saw it as not, because I was like, animation is freeform, robot is form-based. So it's not animation. I see it as an application of animation techniques. Because if you've ever seen some of the best roboters do their thing, it looks thick. You can't deny that. I mean, it looks unreal. And I know that's not a general term, but I see it as in line with animation. But I really think that the biggest distinction for some people would be that it's a form. It's form-based, whereas animation can be anything. It's freeform, it's a texture, it's a technique. So that just it honestly comes down to opinion. It's no hard actual.
I think with robot, it's like a really good level robot dancer is going to be animated.
Yeah.
It's going to give you that visceral experience of when you watch them, like, whoa, what the hell? Like, you're kind of tricking my eye right now.
Which is why I go back to when I talked about the animated and synthetic characterization rooted in principles of animation, which again, all 12 of them can be very broad, can be interpreted all sorts of ways. I focus on easing and art because I think those are the most prominent, but at the end of the day, it's like, it comes down to a simple question for me of, does it look fake?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah. With
It's
robots,
obviously not a way to define it, but like at the end of the day, I'm like, oh yeah, that
Doesn't
that
look
did
fake
look
without
real.
effects.
yeah.
Yeah.
The visceral feeling, the experience of that tripped me out is not limited to robot. I think that's the difference. The big
Yes.
difference.
Yes. It's an application of it.